Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
This is a special news coverage, Majority Report special. The Iowa Caucuses, live from Iowa, but we're not actually in Iowa. We're in Brooklyn, and tonight on the Majority Report, special Iowa programming. Joining us will be Ben Dixon from the Ben Dixon Show via phone. Also in studio, Nomiki Konst of the Nomiki Show.
You can't change it every time. No, me, key.
No, me. Key.
There you go.
I'm still because I have to enunciate because I called you Nomiki for so long,
Right.
and it's Nomiki.
No, Miki. And you're now doing a M.
Nomiki.
There you go.
Nomiki.
No, Miki.
Bon, are you there on the phone? I mean, Ben?
Yeah, Ben is here. How's it going, Sam?
Sorry, I mispronounced your name as well. Of course, with us in studio is Brendan and Matt. Jamie is sick. Michael's on special assignment to Washington, D.C. And also, the great Kyle is with us. If you're seeing him in the background there, as we have upgraded our set a little bit. I forgot to clean some of that stuff off. But we'll later. Also, we will be joined tonight by Virgil, Texas. We will be joined tonight by John from San Antonio. We'll be calling in specifically for to get us up to speed.
Probably to
beforehand.
correct you in some fashion.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday was yesterday for everyone else. For John, it's today.
Right, exactly. We're also going to be talking to Aaron Kleinman, Bobby Big Wheel on the internet, and maybe others. I don't know. And so we're going to be following different and taking issue with the coverage that we see on the mainstream cable outlets, and we'll be giving you some insights into what we're hearing in terms of like where should we be looking, what's the first thing we should be seeing. The first tonight. I am told, and Bobby Bigwheel will tell us about this, about what we should be watching out for. Jackson, Jones, Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clinton counties. These are all apparently Dukakis to Trump counties, right? Going back to '88.
I'm sorry. Dukakis to Trump. Not. That's the last time. Wait, why is it Dukakis to Trump?
We're going to have to ask him that. But the idea is if you want to stop rural bleeding, these are good places to start. So if you get a sense of like, this is like picking up the difference in rural.
Right.
This is the last time that, the Democrat won these.
So who would be really great to talk about this is former Jesse Jackson deputy campaign manager, Jim Zogby, who talks a lot about outreach, the Democratic Party's outreach basically outside of Washington, D.C. But he was there when the fight started over the DNC not funding, state parties and rural counties and in his case, ethnics.
Interesting.
And so there's a big internal fight that year.
Oh, it was in '88.
'88, and then kept going.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I specifically remember that being it was following the Mondale, and Mondale supposedly got sunk because he said we're going to have taxes. And Dukakis refused to identify as a liberal back at a time when you acknowledge that you were a liberal was a bad thing from as far as the right was concerned, as opposed to from the left now. Right. So we'll be talking to, we'll go through this with Bobby Big Wheel. Ben, now what we're going to do is I think we'll bring on John from San Antonio. Ben, I don't know if you've ever heard John from San Antonio, but he's a regular, longtime listener to this program. He helps us out with a lot of primaries and off-year elections. We're going to bring him on, and feel free, Ben, to ask him any questions. He should be able to hear you as well. On the phone now.
I think we'll bring on John from San Antonio. Ben, I don't know if you've ever heard.
There we go. John. John, there you
John from San Antonio, but he's a regular, longtime listener to this program. He helps us out with a lot of
Okay. John's going to come on in a second. John?
Yes. How you doing, Sam?
John, welcome to the program. There we go.
All right. Always look forward to saying good evening, Sam, because I know it's an election night.
That's right. John is in his element. You should know, John, that Nomiki is here, and
Hello. That was perfect.
Thank you. If I did it really quick,
round of applause.
And Ben Dixon is with us. And,
Sorry, Ben.
And of course, so all right. So, John, from your perspective, what should we be looking for tonight, aside from everybody on MSNBC crapping all over Bernie until I'm on at 1 a.m. this morning?
Naturally.
I'm looking for a Sanders victory, really. I mean, he's strong in every congressional district. Obviously, he's strong statewide. He's leading in all the polling. In the prediction markets, pretty much an overwhelming favorite. I'm looking for 17 electoral delegates tonight. I got Biden with 12. Most people have more of a...
So wait a second. You're saying Bernie gets 17.
Right.
Biden gets 12. Any extant?
No, I mean, I have Buttigieg with 7 and Warren with 5. I was just looking at the New York Times, and they got Bernie with only 13, Biden with 11, Buttigieg with 8, and Warren with 6, and Klobuchar with 3. And so this is kind of like there is going to be much more of a sense of parity in Iowa just because of the second vote, and but as opposed to primaries, to where a lot of people aren't going to hit that 15% margin either in the congressional districts or statewide. And so that's actually, I think, is going to help Bernie, like in New Hampshire. He's going to really, mop up on those 24 delegates. But so tonight, we'll see a little bit of parity, but I think Bernie's going to pull away, a little bit, and he's going to win at each congressional district. He's looking really great. In 2016, his strongest two districts were in the first district in the north east side of the state, and then the southeast side, and did pretty well in the fourth district also, Steve King's district. Clinton beat him, just slightly in the Metro Des Moines area in the third district. And so this, according to the Emerson poll that just came out yesterday, that's flipped around a little bit. He's actually stronger in the western side, but he's set to win all 4 congressional districts according to the 4 polls that break it. I mean, the polls that break it down, Emerson, and the poll that came out from Siena, which is a very good poll, who breaks it more down in regions as opposed to congressional districts. But Bernie's just totally strong. And you were mentioned that I was tweeting at Nate Silver because he was saying the possibility that Bernie would win the actual second vote count, but would have lesser delegates, and that's really not possible if the polling is right, because he's strong everywhere. I mean, and that's just fantastic to see that.
Explain that dynamic.
4th district.
Explain that dynamic, because we should also say, I want to remind people what we talked about with Dave Weigel today, which was there's going to be some other metrics we see sort of passed out tonight. One is going to be what you just predicted. That is the delegate totals, which is going to be a function of the whole evening. However, that is different from what the first round of voting is. First round of voting happens in each particular caucus area. If one candidate or another candidate, whatever, does not hit the threshold of 15%, they will then go to the another candidate, or they'll leave. I mean,
or they'll choose. They have a personal choice, or their delegation or their group will decide. They decide as a group, as a mass.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one, we could see a bigger disparity between Bernie, or the leader, let's just say whoever that comes in first, but I think it's going to be Bernie. I think everybody sort of seems to agree on that. Between Bernie and the next closest person, because you could have two candidates that have 14% in that or three who have 14%. And Sanders could theoretically have, 55%, 58%, and the other three have 14%. And then the final tally would be more reflective of maybe Biden get all of those, 52% that's left, or whatever it is.
This would have to be an incredibly secretive whip operation. If there is some sort of quote fix, because there's a lot of rumor of that right now. I mean, there's literally an article on the Bernie side, they're saying that Bernie's, watch out, Bernie might, try to fix the Iowa caucuses or cheat. But it would have to be such a strong whip operation, meaning each the Warren groups, the Pete groups, the Yang groups, whatever, would basically all have to say, as a unit, their whips would say, we're supporting Biden, or...
But how does that even... Well, let's talk about that fix thing in a bit, because I'm not sure I fully understand how it would be fixed in that way. But,
I don't think it could be. That's what I'm saying. It's too difficult.
So, John, so you're thinking that Biden comes in second with that... I mean... That would be good for Biden, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just see that he's pretty consistent in each of the districts. I mean, who knows for sure? I mean, like I was saying on Twitter. I mean, with the Trump election has taught us anything, that we have to really consider margin of error, and so he's right now skirting, depending on how you aggregate the polls, on the margin of error, 4 or 5 points. Bernie's 4 or 5 points ahead of him. And so I think he'll have a decent night, but who knows? I mean, just the idea that Bernie's so far ahead of Buttigieg and Warren that they would, essentially, overtake him seems extremely remote. So it's hard to say for sure, but I see Biden definitely, getting the most delegates because he's just pretty strong in each of the districts.
John, excuse me for 1 second. Let's put up the sound here. Steve Kornacki is doing the entrance polls, and it's really demographics at this point. All right, we just missed it, but can we rewind that just a little bit? Go back 15 seconds for me. Okay, here we go. So here is, listen to this, John and Ben. This is going to tell us the age brackets of people coming in there. Now, I'm not sure how to compare it to, but
Biden, Buttigieg, Warren, Sanders vying for first place. The order very unclear, so sort of a skeletal read on it right there. And we can also show you a little bit more that we've gotten from the exit polls. I keep saying the exit polls. It is, of course, the entrance polls. And we can show you here, we talked about age. We can show you Right here, let's call that one up. We can show you right here. Now, 34%. We said we're getting these in waves. So you notice that number of older voters, 65 plus, has come down to 34%. You can see here 45 to 64 at 29, 30 to 44, 17. And again, 20% here. In fact, I can show you inside the youngest group. This is the youngest group right now. This is what our poll, our entrance poll is showing. And again, this matches what we talked about coming into tonight. The strength of Bernie Sanders, 51% here. Again, we've got more waves to come, but 51% initially, under 30%. You can see Biden, Buttigieg, Warren. That matches what we've been seeing in the polls. We'll wait for more, waves to come in on this. But again, that is something we talked about as a dynamic here. The young vote potentially being there for Sanders.
So, Steve, let me just ask you to underscore that and make it as simple as possible. We saw when the Clinton and Sanders tie happened in 2016 that Sanders obviously had more support for voters under 45. Clinton had more support from voters over 45. It was basically a tie. To the extent that she got any advantage there, it was because there were more older voters. When you're looking at this dynamic, it obviously feels the same way for Senator Sanders. He's getting the support of younger voters. But how does the proportion of younger voters tonight compare to the proportion of younger voters back in 2016?
That I want to,
right, we can, in other words, kind of electorate.
Yeah, it's up by 2 points.
Let me just get it out.
20% to 18.
If you, let me go back
here
to this screen here.
You know what it is from last year? Because we don't need to listen to Kornacki if you got it, John.
It was 18%.
All right.
It was 18%, 17 to 29. Now it looks like it's 20 on the screen they had before,
And do we know what the next age group was?
Yeah, it was the next age group is 30 to 44, and it's 19%.
This he has a 17%. He has a 17%, I think. What about 45 to 64?
It's 36%.
This time it's 29%. And what was over 65?
28.
This time it's 34% as to what they have right now.
Yeah,
but it's 20%. That's not a full. That's only 20% reporting. They're saying an early.
But that is an entrance poll.
An entrance poll, but they said 20% of the entrance poll has been reported. When
so
we
don't know.
So, it's not
we don't know if that's
because my initial assumption was that wasn't good either.
It sort of depends on which part of the state. If you're in a college town, it's going to make a big difference in terms of what those numbers are. So
you know what's interesting?
That's pretty much useless.
Maybe John can comment on this.
Useless information. We're part of it, folks. We're part of the process. Ben, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm hanging out here, Sam.
All right. Well, don't hesitate to jump in with something that really is ultimately meaningless, like we just did. John, I guess we don't really have a strong sense of who's in there. In many respects, I mean, we all want to predict this. We've been trying to do it for a year and a half, and on some level, we just got to wait and see what's happening inside the room.
Right. I mean, one thing that I think is going to be good for Bernie is, it's really going to be kind of on the edge because, I mean, obviously, I think Mike from PA was talking about this, how there are a lot of Bernie voters, and there are a lot of Warren voters, whose second choice is going to be each other. I think it was 44 and 38% in the Siena poll, and so Warren wasn't hit. She was hitting, I think, 14% in all congressional districts in the poll that came out last night from Emerson. And so she really wouldn't hit the threshold in any of those. And so if those voters go to Bernie, I mean, that could really help them quite a bit. So I mean, of course, then again, on the other side, you have probably Klobuchar voters who are going to go to Biden. In fact, Biden was openly talking about some kind of pact about that, and Klobuchar went against that.
Do you think she went against it, or do you think that we just don't know? They just didn't want to talk about it.
Well, press reports said that she didn't really want to deal with that. I mean, she wanted to focus on her own campaign. But the Biden campaign definitely, reached out pretty openly about that, and I think.
Let me ask you this, Nomi.
I mean,
The one thing that Joe Biden seems to have done every time he runs or contemplates running for president is he leaks that he has basically done some outreach to a woman without their permission. Like he did this with Warren in 2015 when he was dabbling with it. He did it with Stacey Abrams this time around.
Right.
I think there's a strategy of like, I know how to appeal to women, and that is to make it look like I'm willing to make a deal with a woman.
I don't know how effective that is. I can't tell you. Like
they
what
seem
the
to be.
metrics
He
are on
seems to
there.
be convinced that that's a good. That's a good.
He also thinks touching women is. I mean, we could go on about
he just
that
likes
forever.
to be friendly.
He's very friendly. Yeah. What I mean, it's interesting though because his ground game is surprisingly weak for somebody who has all the resources and Democratic Party insider support. I mean, we talked about this last week on the show. Hillary had that strength at the local level. She knew all the Democratic Party chairs, firsthand and gave them phone calls. And it doesn't seem to be working with his campaign. And I think that was sort of the projection of the Bernie campaign early on was that the establishment would be divided. But of course, this is when the establishment can team up. And I mean, it's I
honestly think the thing that is right now hurting Biden is, and this is only anecdotal. We got a call from someone who told us the other day that she had a friend who worked as a field director who was hired away to Michigan by Bloomberg.
Bloomberg, yeah.
And it's not that Bloomberg specifically wants Joe Biden personnel. Right. It's just that Warren and Sanders personnel are not going to work for Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And
unless it's Adam Green who wants Bloomberg on stage. So.
Well, I mean, I think we can talk about that.
Love you, Adam.
I think there's value in having him on stage, but my perspective was this is a free vote for us. This is like Susan Collins.
Less time for Bernie on stage when he already doesn't get enough time.
I don't know. I think it's more time for Bernie. It's another target, very a target-rich environment for Bernie. I think it's good to scream about it because I think the DNC should be aware that people are watching.
You think they don't know?
Well, that people are watching. I mean, I think they want to. They're gauging how much blowback they're getting.
They have an office now. They can't afford anything else, the DNC, but they decided to hire a woman who worked for Hillary, who's just monitoring online reactions to Tom Perez's insane and who knows, like troll armies. I mean, they did it at the convention. People don't even remember that. But anyway, side note.
We should talk about this more. But John, anything else? What do you think we should be looking for? Is there something that we should be looking for, John?
I'm looking for just, I mean, I'm obsessed with the districts, because that's really, where the delegates are. I mean, I really disagreed with Weigel and his comments today. I mean, he's a good reporter. I follow him on Twitter. He's a good guy. But the way he was kind of playing down the importance of Iowa, I mean, this is so incredibly important, for especially Warren, but I mean for Bernie also, just to gain momentum. If he wins Iowa, if he wins New Hampshire, he's going to gain so much momentum, and the whole country will be talking about this. And so that just kind of dismisses this.
Did Weigel downplay the importance of Iowa?
He kind of played the Republican
thing.
He
did his.
Remember?
Did he?
Yeah, he was like, well, Trump didn't win Iowa, and it's not the same. It's not the same game. We can't like compare the Republican Party to the Democrats.
I think the biggest issue of Iowa, it seems to me, is where does Biden place? I mean, I think at this point, if Bernie doesn't come in first, it's bad, right? I mean, I don't think that's likely, but if Bernie doesn't come in first, that's a devastating loss.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
In terms of the narrative, like, look, if we're at the point where undecided voters, to the extent that there are any, are, uniquely, maybe that's too strong a word, but particularly in this cycle, more concerned about electability,
right,
than a loss for Bernie when the narrative has been he's going to win Iowa. Mm-hmm. For however long it's been, I think is very problematic in those in that regard, because we can look at the polling anywhere else, but that's presuming it's static. If Biden comes in fourth, I think that's devastating for Biden because we're already seeing some tightening in South Carolina. That's Biden's firewall. He's got two major firewalls, as far as I can tell. It is South Carolina and it's Texas. Mm-hmm. And he has to win big in both those places for it to be an effective firewall. And if he comes out in fourth after Warren and Buttigieg, I think he's in big trouble because I think South Carolina starts to crave it for him. And I imagine there's going to be a poll that comes out in the next 6 days before you get to New Hampshire about South Carolina. And if that polling shows him down, I think you're going to hear that narrative of like New Hampshire's do or die for Biden. And I think that's just what I think the narrative is going to be.
What's the chance that that Warren squeaks out in second and Biden comes in third?
Here, I have no idea. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I have no sense of it. You know, like, we don't know what this last poll was. Supposedly Bernie was up double digits. I don't even know if I believe that because that's just a leak that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say that, Biden's lead over Buttigieg and Warren has been consistently about 3 or 4 points in an average of polls. And so, it could happen. I mean, I was just going over some more recent polls, and Biden's doing a lot better. I think Buttigieg's support is so soft. One poll he's up, one poll he's down. Bernie's extremely consistent. Biden's fairly consistent, and Warren has become more consistent in the last weekend and a half. But
all right.
I mean, again, I just think that Bernie, I think he's going to win. I'm super confident he's going to win. But, I mean, if it's a delegate split, I mean, New York Times only has him getting 2 more delegates than Biden. I mean, I don't. All
right, so listen, I'm looking now. I'm looking now. A reporter from 538 tweets, we can confirm the final results of the unreleased Iowa poll. Sanders 22, Warren 18, Buttigieg 16, Biden 13.
Told you. Warren's coming second.
Now.
I'll call it now.
Well, all right. So Nomi has just called it.
I'll call it that. I'll bet on that. I don't know. What do you want to bet on?
Pizza?
I already got the free pizza.
What's left of the pizza?
Let's make it fun.
We shall see. I mean, let's put it this way. If the results tonight reflect that poll,
it's very good for us.
I think Joe Biden is in deep trouble.
Yep.
Because, and we've been saying this for a year. To the extent that he has popularity, it is built on his ability to win. Mm-hmm. And, when the polling starts getting tight and all of a sudden he loses, it's very hard to tell people like, yeah, Joe Biden's going to win, but he can't he can't come in second.
Yeah.
In Iowa. Like, really? I think that's a very, very.
So let's play something out here. This is since we have nothing to do until we know things. Okay, what if Warren comes in second and in New Hampshire, she does very well in New Hampshire as well. And suddenly the establishment starts throwing their weight behind Warren instead of, Bernie, I think the problem, and I hate to say this, guys, and this is why Bernie's strategy of bringing outside voters is so important and winning by huge margins. The problem is you have an establishment that's going to fall in line with whoever is not Bernie, including Warren.
I think they are more likely at this point to fall in line behind Bloomberg. And I think because, look, this is the thing. They have not taken Bernie seriously as a real threat. Mm-hmm. And so they have trained themselves to be terrified of Warren. Like, you
Who's
hear all
they?
these,
like voters or
the establishment, the money.
Yeah.
And so I think they will not be nimble enough, and they will not have frankly the emotional ability to say it's now or never to get on the Warren train. I think I think we're going to see a very similar dynamic that what we saw in the Republican nomination, which is it is just denial, delusion, tin ear. They had if they had that nimbleness, they would have known already that Bernie was a problem.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think they
John,
know. I think they know he's a problem. They just ignore. That's why they ignore him.
I disagree. Hold on one second, John. We'll check back within a couple hours. Okay, buddy.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks. John from San Antonio. Folks, you can follow John from San Antonio on his Twitter feed at, are you ready for this? Cacophonous
Dendrite.
Oh, well, no, but that's not his actually at number. It is at CACOPHONOUSSHODW. We'll put a link underneath.
What does HOW stand for?
I don't know. John, I think, wants to lay low, and but there it is.
But I'm now.
All right, let's bring on. Let me just do this, and then we're going to bring on in a second Aaron Kleiman. I think the reason why they were able to raise money to fight Warren, according to the reporting, is because they just don't think Bernie Sanders can win. I just think they think like.
But I don't buy that. I just think they want. I do think that they think he's a threat, whether he can win or not. I think they just want to stop him, and that was why Warren, in terms of establishment, whether it's the New York Times or like the New York City establishment, intellectual types. I mean, that's really when it comes down to is it's not that they don't think he can't win. It's that they just ultimately don't want him.
Well, I don't think they want Warren either. I think they didn't. I think they just never took Bernie seriously. They just thought that he had a ceiling that is immovable. And so they don't have to worry about him. And I think if they
didn't,
that's we heard
Neera Tanden wouldn't be like having hissy fits online, and they would be pitching Oppo stories, and they wouldn't have millions of dollars in Brock bots online.
I think that she is. I don't think she's functioning strategically. I'm sorry, I don't.
Wait, what?
There was a story in the Atlantic, Ron Brownstein, who's saying that the Biden people are convinced that Bernie can't win. They're still convinced that he has a ceiling.
The Biden people. Oh my God.
I think that's what's.
They can't possibly.
Sam,
I mean, go ahead.
Well, I'm just telling you what's being reported. And I'm just telling you, like, I still remember, like, I just think they think he has a ceiling. And I think, like, Steve Schmidt.
Yeah.
He may be, he's a political operative. He may be savvy enough to realize, like, Bernie is a problem.
But that's who's on these shows. I'm not saying collectively, right? Of course, they're going to be Chris Matthews, who's in a studio in an ivory tower with his wife, who is an operative. But they're there to reinforce the centrist narrative and to dismiss Bernie. But there are people legitimately on the ground and connected online who see the wave.
I think the money, though.
Right.
I think the money, right? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, there's nothing they can do. If the money does not believe that Bernie's a threat and are not willing to dish out to do ads against him because they're being told that he has a ceiling, that's all that matters. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, because Steve Schmidt can say whatever he wants. With all due respect to MSNBC, I love it very much. It's a wonderful place, and I can't wait to be there tonight. No, whoever they're talking to is not going to decide this.
Right.
That's just the bottom line, and particularly in the context of stopping Bernie. I mean, it may stop Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
But if Bernie's whole theory of the case is correct, they're not watching MSNBC.
Right.
The people who are going to make the difference for him. Maybe 3 months from now, you want MSNBC on there, on the like encouraging people on some level. But the fact of the matter is, like, I think there's a situation like at Fox. They were very anti-Trump for a long time, and then at one point they realized, like, got to get on the Trump train.
Well, and
one of the things that really shocked me about this entire process. Yes, I see the chat room was like, Ben is still here. I'm still here, guys. With Warren, Warren, it really surprises me how much the establishment has been trying to avoid her when she obviously was their easiest pick to stave off Bernie Sanders. And so it seems to me that they just have a genuine desire to not have Warren, not as much as Sanders, right? They clearly want to keep Sanders out at all costs. But to me, it's like Warren has never seemed to me as a viable pick for the establishment just because of how much they have avoided her with candidate after candidate. Even now, the New York Times, or was it the Washington Post it was NBC that overheard the former Secretary of State John Kerry having a discussion about what it would take for him to get into the race if Joe Biden tanks. So even in this worst case scenario, they're still not looking at Warren as a viable option just yet.
I think the thing about Warren is that they're afraid that other people are going to see her, and that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of her possibility.
She just won the New York Times endorsement. I mean,
right,
slightly.
which didn't even move the needle with New York Times readers. Never mind anybody else. But I think I think sometimes we can underestimate the profound lack of imagination and strategic thought by the people who have all this money that they're willing to put.
People of McKinsey.
Yeah, honestly. All right, let's pick up Bobby Big Wheel is here. Aaron, are you there?
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Aaron, thanks for joining us. I should just tell you that I'm here with Noah McKee Const and Ben Dixon. And we're all here, the speculating, conjecturizing, but now it's time for some hard numbers to the extent that they're not actually that hard. Okay, where are we at? What do we need to know? What's happening? Who's going to win?
All right. So,
and when I say that,
who's going to win, we have no idea.
Okay.
I think the problem, I'm generally anti-caucus because it's not something, I really would distrust entrance polls for caucuses. Totally. It seems like the polling all over the map, it's kind of tough for pollsters to replicate generally. And so
Aaron, is it possible are you on a speakerphone?
No, I'm on a headset, but I can try. Hold on.
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah. Headsets are bad. Are you off the headset?
Hold on. Sorry about that.
Oh my gosh. You sound so much better now. That's a tip for everybody. Never go on a radio show with headsets. Bad.
I actually bought a radio-specific headset, and so I'm going to go to B&H and demand my money back.
Yeah, honestly. And you know what? Send them this tape. Send them this tape.
All right, I will. I'll let them know. All right, I'll go back and get this. But yeah, so I would say, and I think what everyone should go into tonight thinking about is don't think about the hard numbers. Don't twist yourself into not thinking about the delegate math, because ultimately it's a pretty low number of delegates at stake here. And trying to kind of go through all the different permutations of, who will end up, it'll end up being a difference of like a few delegates here and there. I mean, compared to something like a Super Tuesday, this is nothing. And it's really going to be, the two big effects that are going to happen are A, how the media is going to play everything. And I think you guys have that pretty well covered. But B, the other thing that everyone should really be looking to is kind of how the candidates perform in certain counties, especially with Bernie relative to his 2016 performance, and how that bodes for the rest of the primary season.
All right, let me just reiterate what you're saying and say it back to you, because I think Weigel was on the program and he said the same thing, and I think that got poo-pooed. And what you're saying is the actual numbers are less relevant than the order in which people come in. If someone comes in fourth, that's more relevant because we're talking about a media narrative than the fact that they got, 3 or 7 or 10 less delegates.
No, I actually wouldn't say that. I mean, if someone, like if Biden comes in fourth, that's really bad.
Right.
There's no way of spinning that. But
right. But that's media narrative, as opposed to the fact that he got 5 less delegates than Bernie. You can make that up in Rhode Island or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So media narrative is still important.
Right.
But I'm saying the other thing to look at is really how they do in certain places relative to others, and what that says about their strength among certain Democratic communities. Because there's been a lot of talk about who's really kind of doing better among the professional and managerial class. Who's going to win over those white working class voters? Who's the more electable one? Well, I think that people in especially like swingy areas are pretty good judges of who's electable. And so doing well in those areas, it's kind of a sign that, hey, maybe you are electable.
Okay. All right. So let's go through these areas, right? Because this way, folks, you can play along at home with Bobby Bigwheel, who's a professional at this. And okay, so let's start with Jackson, Jones, Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clinton counties. What do those counties signify? Like, if I win those counties, what does that say about Sam Seder in the event that I was to jump into the race at this late date, which would be a mistake? But
well, good luck.
Thank you.
So, so the thing about Iowa is that there are a ton of small counties, and some of them they're only going to have like a few hundred votes here. So you want to look at them in aggregate. And I picked those 5 because they've seen a lot of competitive down ballot races over the past few years. And so but also, I think you've probably heard a lot about, Obama to Trump counties.
Right.
And these are all Dukakis to Trump counties. Like, these are rural areas that Democrats have been winning for years and years and years until Hillary Clinton came along, or until Donald Trump came along, depending on who you think was more at fault there.
Okay, so these were Dukakis, these were Clinton, right. These were Gore,
Kerry.
These were Obama and Kerry. Okay, so these have been Democratic districts since Dukakis, you're saying, and they turned to Trump. And who are these folks? Are they small town folks? Have all of their kids left these districts to go to the big city? I mean, what's going on there?
Oh yeah, the population in these areas is stagnant. These areas, they tend to have better kind of community institutions. They're they're in the eastern and northern portion of the state, and that's kind of closer to Minnesota and Wisconsin. And you have some of that kind of more communitarian culture there than you might have in the southern and western parts of the state. Which is kind of how Dukakis was able to win them as he was getting swamped nationwide. I mean, again, like Hillary Clinton did about as well as Walter Mondale in all these places.
Thank you.
And so there's going to be a lot of returns coming in from all these small counties, and people will try to make a big deal out of a few hundred people coming out in them. So I want to take like a group of 5 that had seen a lot of competitive races and look at them in aggregate and see, who do these people who saw Democrats get wiped in 2016, for 2016, it was a devastating year for a lot of people. But for these people, it's kind of the equivalent of a landslide loss, just in terms of how much the Republican vote shifted against them. So who do these people think should be the Democratic nominee? To me, that's at the very least interesting. And again, when you want to talk about electability, these people who kind of saw this shift probably have an idea of who their neighbors would want to vote for in a general election.
Okay, and so just to be clear here, this is not just an Obama to Trump voter. These are people who were not part of like the Obama, surge, if you will. These are long-time stalwart Democrats who went for Trump in this district, or I should say not necessarily even Democrats. They were long-time Democratic voting districts that went for Trump. And that's what you mean by Dukakis to Trump. Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
Not just that.
They're traditionally the East is traditionally Democratic, just generally speaking. Did these people just stay home, or did they turn to Trump? That's what I'm curious about.
There's a little of both. CCES has done a bunch of studies on how many exact Obama to Trump voters there are, and you can't, no one has really gone into the voter files to actually, or maybe someone has, but I haven't seen a consensus around it. I mean, there is a decent number of vote switching, but you are right that there was a lot of people just staying home, and also there's a pretty significant third-party vote in these areas as well.
Interesting.
So a lot of people were, who kind of tuned out the Democrats in 2016. Now, we did see a bit of a rebound in these areas in 2018, but maybe not as much as we were hoping. It seems that like some of that shift may have stuck.
Okay, and so if I'm a candidate and I win this heavily, that's indicative of maybe areas that were other areas, states, counties in maybe swing states that had been Democratic for a long time and cut against and voted for Trump. That's maybe indicative of maybe my palatability in that area.
Exactly. And, one thing to keep in mind, too, is, Iowa is itself a swing state. It usually doesn't make it up to the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania tier, but this is a pretty elastic electorate because you have white, non-college, but non-evangelical voters, which are the most elastic voters in the country, the ones most likely to switch between parties. Now, that may be changing as, there is some permanent movement to Trump, but this is a group of voters who we saw in 2016 were really anti both parties. And the people who are really anti-Trump and anti-Clinton, they overwhelmingly went to Trump in 2016. And so it would be nice to nominate someone who, you don't have to nominate someone who will even win all those voters. You need to nominate someone who can get more of them than Clinton, And
okay, so give me a locale that this would be indicative of. All right, I've come in first in these areas. And so that's going to help with the narrative that Sam can win in where?
Rural Wisconsin.
Okay.
One thing, just
Aaron.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, real
Ben,
quick.
Ben.
This is Ben on the phone. Does any of that translate to what's happening tonight? Do you think any of the data from 2016, 2018, the likability or the dislikability of Hillary Clinton, does that give us any insight into who's likely to perform how? Because as I hear your description, it sounds more like working class areas that would have a better affinity towards Bernie Sanders than they ever would have Hillary Clinton. Do you see any connection from 2016 to what's happening right now?
Yeah. Even looking at 2018, at my job, I have to figure out where Democrats should contest in order to flip state legislative races. And the number one factor in that, no matter where you are, is the Clinton vote in 2016. That's just the Democratic baseline nationwide that we're operating from. Now, there are certain things that indicate that Democrats can overperform her in certain areas. Things like, first of all, a high population with some college education is actually pretty, she severely underperformed how a Democrat should among those people. Areas with a high poverty rate, she underperformed in those areas. And again, among white voters. And so those three things actually describe pretty significant chunks of eastern Iowa. And we saw Democrats down ballot overperform her pretty significantly. Though again, there was some kind of permanent shift toward Republicans there. But in 2018, we saw a big shift, back toward Democrats, a bounce, an indicator that maybe Hillary Clinton was uniquely unpopular in these areas, and that Democrats can build on them. Now, those do seem like areas where Bernie Sanders would be able to improve over her among those populations. And there are two, I believe, state representatives in Iowa who've endorsed him. One of them is from the city of Des Moines, and the other one of them represents basically the southeast corner of the state, in an area that Trump won, but has shifted back, but it remained Democratic down ballot. And so this is the type of area that is. And so if Bernie Sanders can show his strength among these voters, I think it's a way for him to signal, hey, this is me putting together the Obama coalition again. This is me maybe, I think for him, his goal is to put together the FDR coalition. I think that's very hard in this polarized landscape. But I mean, that can help feed into his narrative of kind of what his coalition, what his majority looks like.
So we should just remind people that's Jackson, Jones, Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clinton counties. You got to look at the aggregate of those counties. These were counties where in 2016, Democrats were competitive on the down ballots, but Clinton lost. And it was really the first time that the Democrat lost in those counties since pre-Dukakis. And I don't know if people remember him in that tank, but whatever. All right, anyways. Okay, so Lynn County.
By the way, the guy, hold on, a bit of trivia. The guy who decided to do the Dukakis in the tank photo op, you know what he does now?
Advise Hillary?
No, he's actually one of the top guys at the Third Way.
Yeah. Oh,
that makes sense.
Boom.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
This time around, we know that this came out of the Unity Reform Commission. We know the delegate count. We know how many people show up in the primary, or in the caucuses, what the count is going to be. And we didn't have that number in the past. So when you look at who showed up for Hillary during the caucuses or for Bernie, and then you match that to who showed up for Hillary for the general, I would be really interested to know how that matches up. It's hard. We can't gauge it, but
it is. And I mean, I hate caucuses. They're really anti-democratic. And you'll see that in just like there are very low raw vote totals in these.
Right.
And so
only like
it's hard to do that
16% of
match.
people participate in the caucus.
But that's not. Wait, sorry, I'm going to push back on that because we debated this in the Reform Commission. That's actually pretty comparable to like other states with primaries in which the parties, at least the parties, don't control the caucuses. It's a state. I'm sorry, vice versa. Excuse me. The state controls the primaries, meaning like New York has a turnout of around the same.
But by the time New York has their primary,
just in general,
and New York is really bad at like allowing people to vote.
But a lot of states have. The numbers are within range of many other states. Bernie fought hard to keep caucuses, but just make them more democratic.
I'm skeptical of caucuses myself, but be that as it may, it is what it is. So it's hard to determine. I just think that more access is better, and I think we could raise the ability of the number of people voting by doing mail-in ballots, and opening up registration and making it a holiday when to vote. Yeah. I guess that would help caucuses as well, but I think voting is just easier to do. I mean, it's just without a doubt, it's a lower bar, a lower threshold.
But are the numbers going to boost us in any way, knowing what the actual number count is?
What do you mean? If we were to get rid of a caucus?
You go into a caucus, right? 4 years ago, you go into a caucus. We didn't know. Jeff Weaver stated he didn't know how many people were at a caucus site. So when all those people were shut out, they had no way of measuring. And now they at least have to report what is the count of the caucus room. It's right, unmeasurable, complete chaos.
All right, so let's move to Lynn County. This is Cedar Rapids, right? And
yes.
And I guess there was an Ed Helms movie there.
It was good. You guys should check it out. It has John C. Reilly in it, Anne Heche, Kurtwood Smith, great cast. But anyway, Cedar Rapids. So this is the economic and cultural hub of Eastern Iowa. It's more well-off, better educated than a lot of the rest of the state. So if you want to talk about kind of in the eastern part of the state, traditionally Democratic, because it's more educated, the drop off here for Hillary wasn't as bad. But it's a huge population center, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of, this is the type of area where you want to kind of run up the margins of the suburbs compared to previous years. And the suburbs have been trending more and more Democratic. So, who wins here? You would think that maybe like a Buttigieg or a Warren, because they've had really kind of campaigns that, in my opinion, more aimed toward, the professional classes. You would think that it would really be them fighting out here, but, it'll be interesting to see if that ends up being the case. That's, I think Lynn County is one of, and then I think it's probably your best indicator of, and if you want to compare it to somewhere else in one of the main swing states, I would say it'd be comparable to, maybe like in Michigan, something like Oakland County a little bit, where it's kind of that more upscale, upwardly mobile, better educated area, how they're feeling about it.
This is the resistance. This is the heart of the resistance.
Yeah, in the eastern part of the state.
Okay.
It's still low. I mean, very low undergraduate degree. It's like, what, around 30% average in Iowa, throughout Iowa?
Yeah, I think it's lower than that. You also, whenever you see that number, you also have to keep in mind that there's a pretty significant, especially in there's a pretty significant some college education as well.
Okay.
And then, and the upper Midwest tends to have higher rates.
Let me just jump in here before we move on to Polk and Dallas counties. Dave Wasserman from the Cook Political Report. What do you say? What do you say to Aaron? Is he know what he's talking about?
Yeah, he's all right. Just stay on his nice side. He can be a little.
I understand what you're saying. You don't want to get attacked by him because you're in that business. All right, but regardless, we'll find out if what this guy says is legit, because he is saying that he's heard widespread reports. Sometimes folks, they play with you. They want to get your hopes up. Widespread reports of Joe Biden barely or not viable in the types of precincts he should have, he should be to have any type of a chance. Having a hard time seeing him in the top 3. Long way to go. So let's do this.
This is amazing.
Let's jump. Bobby Big Wheel, much more interesting like persona than Dave Wasserman.
Thank you.
Let's jump to those. What are those precincts that Joe Biden should be doing so well in? What counties?
All right, you want one county that Joe Biden should be doing well in. It's Dubuque County. It is heavily Catholic, a lot more blue collar. I mean, it's kind of, that is like the Scranton of Iowa. He's the guy who campaigns on. I'm the guy who can win back Scranton. It really is very similar. And then like similar to Scranton, like in Scranton, Clinton barely won the county that's in, and then she barely lost Dubuque County. And I think she was the first Democrat to lose it since Adlai Stevenson.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. So if you want, so if you want to see if Biden's in serious trouble, he's losing Dubuque County because that's where he, and it's a big population center. He got the endorsement of the congresswoman from there. And so you would expect him to do well there. That said, with Wasserman, now that we're talking about his election night calls and not his kind of analysis, I will say in the past he has been a little fast on that trigger finger with some of his calls. So.
All right, but you said that in a very polite and diplomatic way. Is there another place, Dubuque, that seems like a slam dunk for Joe Biden. I mean, that's literally like probably everybody there says, come on, man, or hey, I'm the guy, or forgive me, bless me, Father, I've sinned. Where's the second place? Dubuque, and where else does Biden need?
I would say look to Woodbury and Pottawatomie counties. In the West, those are places that Bernie actually won in 2016, I think, in the caucuses. They're the population centers of Western Iowa. And again, they're like a little more like blue collar, they're kind of more Scrantonish, or I guess more historically Republican than a place like that. It's really like you have there's these agricultural processing hubs, and they have like these blue cities and really red surrounding areas. And so you have these kind of counties that used to be pretty tightly contested. Obama won the state by keeping margins close there, but then Clinton just got blown out in them. And they always have these really, they're used to kind of competitive down ballot races. And so the people there, I think, are pretty attuned to, they want to nominate someone who can carry the day. So if Biden's losing those as well, that's really not a good sign for him.
Particularly since like Biden's, sort of core brand proposition is, I win those guys.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, if you can't win those guys,
that's right.
He's going to need more than, a blessing from his dad or whoever it is that guy. Sorry.
So, and I know what the message will be, if that's the case. I mean, I can think out what the message will be. It's that, this is what a turnout caucus is. It's only the main party activists. This isn't what, the swing voters want, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that may be, but we have New Hampshire coming up in a week, and if he doesn't improve drastically on that, because in New Hampshire it is a primary, and it's normally a high turnout, and Republicans and independents can vote in it. So, if anyone comes out of Iowa saying, this was just all the super libs voting for Bernie, voting for Warren, I'm the one who can actually win, the swing voters, well, prove it in New Hampshire.
Right. And I got to say that, like, I'm sorry, if Joe Biden comes in fourth, there is no amount of hemming and hawing, I think, that's going to help this guy. I just think that we are so close to the precipice of, like, even his should be, Woodbury and Pottawatomie County defenders are just already, like, I think this is one of those situations where, like, I'm trying to remember, the Three Stooges, where they would just pound on the guy. He would still be standing, and then just somebody would walk up and go, and he would fall over. And that's, I think, like, I think that's what, if Biden comes in fourth, I think, I think everybody heads for the hills. And I don't know. I think Bloomberg searches, frankly, but
freaks me out. CBS is saying that the 40 plus crowd right now, is 18% higher than the under 40, and under 40 is who knows? This is early reporting, but how does that fare for Biden? How much of the 40 plus crowd is he getting, or estimated to get?
That's the fascinating thing for me, because it really seems like he's been slipping, especially because, Bernie's brought to light the fact that, he said things about Social Security in the past that, maybe aren't very popular.
Right.
And so, it's really, and again, this is why the caucuses are kind of infuriating, but also fascinating, because it's like, people can go in and they can argue, have it out. I mean, it's obvious that, Pete and Klobuchar are the others who are trying to go after, if Biden's wounded, they're the ones who want to kind of go after everyone, and, hopefully they can, siphon away some of his support. Again, also, I'm always wary of entrance or exit polls, as the case may be. I remember as a young cub partying in 2004 because we heard that John Kerry was sweeping to victory, winning Nevada by 10 points or whatever.
All right. Knock that off, please.
I know.
All right.
Patience is a virtue, guys.
Yeah. Imagine being in front of a
You'll have them
huge room of AM talk radio guests as you were as you're steering that ship into the iceberg. All right. So Polk and Dallas County. We haven't talked about them. What the heck? Dallas is supposed to be in Texas. All right, go ahead. What is it? What is Polk and Dallas counties?
That's the bulk of the greater Des Moines area. There's a county called Des Moines County. Someone's going to clown themselves by saying someone's carrying Des Moines because they're carrying Des Moines County.
Right.
Totally different. And Polk, and so if you think about Polk and Dallas, that's the part of Iowa that's probably the most similar to the rest of the Democratic electorate. Just in terms of, it's more urban than the rest of the state, more diverse than the rest of the state, though, again, with Iowa, you still don't have that much of it there. But, especially like you can look at a precinct level. Some of the precincts in Des Moines will be heavily minority, and you can kind of see the candidates' relative strength in those. And then Dallas is again, a more resistance-heavy area. It's a traditionally red county, but it's been trending Democratic. That's where you have a lot of that energy. Democrats were able to flip some seats down ballot in and around Des Moines in 2018, and they're going after Republicans in some of those other seats again in 2020. And if you want to look at kind of a place that looks more like the rest of the country, look at Polk and Dallas to see who's doing well there, who the Democrats there think should be their standard bearer.
So if I hear you correctly, there are precincts in Polk that could end up being you get those results and you come on there, and if you're Pete Buttigieg and you're doing great in some of those precincts, you're going like, hey, all this stuff about how Pete was horrible to black people on the police force and has real problems in his own campaign with people who are not lily white. It doesn't matter because look at the way he did at Polk, right? That's what. That's where, if Pete Buttigieg wins that, we're going to hear that. But frankly, we're going to hear it from any of the candidates because they're trying to make an argument about who's going to appeal to non-white voters to basically, and people need to remember, Democrats lose the white vote. And they need to be able to, in the context of both the primary and the general election, black people, brown people, Asian folk, they need to be motivated to come out. And so this is theoretically like the best you can do when you're coming from Iowa in terms of getting a sense of how predictive it is. Yeah. And again, we are talking about small numbers here, but it's the best data we have right now. And it will be until South Carolina votes about who's really doing well among those communities. So, again, it'll be kind of thin gruel because it's not that big, but it's something, and I think it's better than most of the evidence we have so far. That's the exciting thing about the Iowa Caucus. It's like we've been arguing back and forth for basically 3 years on who's best equipped to win this thing, and now we actually have finally data from people who are weighing in saying, hey, this is who we think should be the Democratic standard bearer. And I think the takes will get, maybe more contentious, maybe a little weirder, but at the very least, there will be data that is very hard to ignore
finally coming out of Iowa.
I mean, it really sounds to me, in talking to you, and I should tell you, I'm going to warn you right now, when I go on MSNBC, I'm going to regurgitate everything you said so that I sound like I know what I'm talking about. And I just want to make that clear. I'm owning it. So I don't want to get anybody on Twitter saying
all I'll say is if you feel like you can go toe-to-toe with Kornacki, he's on another level, man.
Yeah, but he's going to be exhausted by
He has a research team.
I know. He's going to be exhausted by
Gets
then.
him with his guard down.
But it does sound to me like the key to Iowa is coming up with the best argument for a lot of spin coming out of it. Right? I mean, that's basically what it is.
No,
like,
absolutely.
That must be a little bit frustrating for you, who's a data guy, where it's like, the data here is, I wouldn't do this is not how I would do it if I was going to invest in a startup in terms of in terms of data, but this is the best we got. And so spin it.
Yeah.
That's why
I'm
I
an
love
archaeologist,
caucuses.
and I found a little shard of pottery, but I want a pyramid, man. But all I have is this little shard of pottery to tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to massage that metaphor and say something slightly different. Like, all I got is like a little shard of rock, and I want a pyramid, I might say.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's, and again, this is I don't want to downplay too. I mean, Democrats are voting for president for the first time. That's a big deal. It tells us something. We can find the data there that said, you really can't over-determine this. The Iowa caucuses aren't destiny. I mean, Mike Huckabee won them, and projecting too much from this is, you might kind of make yourself end up looking a little foolish if you try to determine too much from them. You got New Hampshire coming in a week. You got South Carolina and Nevada coming after that. And so, if you have a really hot take coming out of Iowa, there's a chance that it could, fall flat based on how those states go.
Right. You only have a couple of days.
First signs of what might actually be going on.
You only get a couple of days.
But if someone
Go ahead, Ben.
If someone significantly underperforms like Joe Biden, if Joe Biden comes in fourth, I think it's really a strong predictor of where it's pretty much the end of his campaign. He might, stagger along until South Carolina. But, for the underperformers, and I think that's the threat to Bernie if Bernie doesn't overperform, right? Because the media is already setting the bar so high for him in terms of performing, but then they're also trying to sandbag the results by saying Iowa doesn't really matter. Right. So I think whoever doesn't perform in a way that they can't be outspun, I think that can be some predictor, don't you think?
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of already, I think the Bernie leading the polls thing led to a spate of Iowa doesn't matter takes. And, it's, anyone saying it's like, they're trying to make Iowa not matter. But the fact is, this is the first evidence we have of what people think. It's, it is in a swing state with a lot of swingy areas. And if you know where to look, there are areas similar to the rest of the country. And you might see the other primary voters voting the same way. It's not destiny, but, it's something. And it's, Iowa matters. And if you're kind of judicious about how much it matters, then you can really learn something.
Apropos of this, Dave Sirota, who is, of course, who is working some kind of crazy ass alchemy on Twitter, is put up two screenshots. One was by the writer Jennifer Rubin. She's an opinion writer, and she wrote a piece in May of 2019, less than a year ago. Why Iowa is so important this time. And within, May, I guess 8 months later, in fact, just today, when we've seen what those pollings are, she writes, "What good are the Iowa caucuses anyway?"
Unbelievable.
Democracy
dies in darkness.
Exactly.
And really, that shows
how do they even remember
bad analysis, an analyst she is, because the caucuses traditionally favor more liberal candidates, and she's like the never Trumper who's a fifth column in the Democratic Party. And she's the one trying to move us to the center. And it's just, if you're the person trying to move us to the center, you're saying in May 2019 that Iowa doesn't matter. Look at New Hampshire.
Right.
And just the fact that it really just shows that she's incompetent.
Right. All right. Fair enough. I mean, I think we should probably, that's the important thing. It's not ill will. It's just sheer incompetence at executing ill will. All right. So let me ask you this just lastly. And I should, Jay, just to reiterate, I guess a little bit what Ben said and put a fine point on it. It seems to me that if Bernie doesn't come in first, and like you say, it doesn't matter, 3, 5 delegates, that doesn't matter at the end of the day because he's going to have to win a lot more delegates going out. But in terms of like the narrative that's spun, if he doesn't come in first, it's problematic for him. If Biden comes in third and particularly fourth, it is highly problematic for him. And everybody else is just sort of like, okay, you're in it. I mean, if Pete Buttigieg doesn't get any delegates, I think that's a problem. But I think within the realm of sort of like what's happening in there in terms of this race, those are the two major things that can happen that I think would really change the trajectory in a dramatic way. One is Biden coming in fourth, and the other is Bernie not coming in, maybe a close second, but not coming in at the top.
It has a different meaning. The caucus has a different meaning for each candidate.
Right.
And it's essentially a messaging tool and a momentum tool for some and a killer for others. And a negotiating tool for people like Pete.
Let's just tell us, just to round this out, just in case I get asked this at MSNBC at 1 a.m. Scott and Muscatine counties. First off, am I pronouncing that correctly? Because I want to come off like I know what I'm talking about. And
No.
This is like.
Who's going to correct you, Steve Kornacki?
Well, yeah, Kornacki's not awake at that time. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to.
No, you got it. And yeah, so that's Quad Cities area, and that's it's similar to, I don't know, like a Green Bay or something. Though maybe a little more Democrat, or like a La Crosse, Wisconsin, or Erie, Pennsylvania. These kind of traditionally Democratic, more blue collar areas that have kind of, you have the city areas have kind of, maybe Clinton didn't do as well in them, but also you have some suburbs that might be trending our way. And it's kind of these mid-sized metro areas because, you hear all this talk about, Democrats being coastal elites and all this stuff. And it's like, they do tend to be closer in cities, but there are a lot of kind of mid-sized cities. And when you're looking at a state, it's kind of on the edge of competitiveness, like in Ohio as well is a great example of this, like Dayton there or Toledo there. It's like, like you build a coalition by, building out your strength in these kind of mid-sized metro Midwestern areas, close to the national median in education, suburban areas that have traditionally been Republican, but maybe you can get them to trend your way. And again, it's, Democrats need to do well in these places in 2020 to beat Trump. And so I think it matters who the people there want to be the presidential nominee.
Interesting. Well, Bobby Big Wheel on Twitter. Aaron Kleinman is your that's your handle, right?
My government name, yeah.
That's the. And we're gonna just reverse it all here. And now it's Bobby Big Wheel to me. I don't even care what your parents call you. From Future Now, really excellent. Really appreciate you coming on and giving everybody a sense of like, what we can, what we should be anticipating, and also what's going to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about tonight. So I appreciate that.
Always happy to help, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there you go. So Ben,
yep.
I mean, on some level, it's becoming clearer and clearer that this is basically our job on some level. Like Iowa is, how it's spun is going to be huge, and it's going to be, there's few occasions where I say like Twitter, what you do on Twitter is relevant, but this is one of those occasions.
Oh, come on.
What?
Come, you're...
What?
Okay, Boomer.
What? What? No. I mean, I think some of those fights I think are important, obviously, because you're talking to members of the press and they're immersed in it, and this is their perspective. But I think like this moment is even bigger.
Well, it's about swing voters, base voters, raising money. All of these tools are used at different times. TV is used at different times for different electorate. You know, it really, it's not a zero-sum game.
I just got called boomer.
You're not a boomer right now. I had to go with something.
No, I understand that.
I learned what your age was.
Believe me, I get that.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. No, that's it. I've got some defenders on the YouTube chat and on the Twitch stream chat. But
my father's on there. He goes, "Are you guys going to be on Twitch?"
Oh, your dad's on Twitch?
I don't know. I was so confused. I don't even know how to use Twitch. I don't know.
Your dad's on Twitch? Is he a gamer?
He literally asked, "Are we?" I don't know if he's on it or isn't. But speaking of boomers, he's your boomer on Twitch.
There you go.
I think he might be.
Boom.
Yeah. Shout out Harry Const.
So I mean, this is we're getting some. We're starting to see like images of people. Now, where is this? This is in Des Moines. Okay. And I just saw that yellow sheet of paper and it looked pretty good. Let's turn up the volume here.
Sanders 129, Buttigieg 172, Klobuchar 140, Warren 212, Biden 131.
Whoa.
Steyer 26, not viable. Yang 28, not viable. So you have, let me do the math.
Klobuchar doing better than Biden in Des Moines.
54, right? No, 52. I was not a math major. 52 people in this room who will potentially realign. So you're going to have people from every one of these different campaigns go over to these two sections. One of them over here where people are already starting to move. This was the Steyer area. They're already negotiating up there. And then the Yang section over here. I'm really interested in the Yang section because I feel like if you're voting for Andrew Yang, are you a more progressive voter? Are you a more moderate voter? Are you going to go for Buttigieg or Klobuchar? Are you going to go for Sanders or Warren? Let's go ask some of these folks what they think. Hey, guys. You're not viable. I'm sorry. Who are you going to
Warren.
Yeah.
Tell me why. Well, number one, she's killing it, obviously.
She has the most in this caucus.
Yeah. Yep.
So Warren get her another delegate, I think.
Oh, she does?
We have 20-some of us, so I think we could get her another delegate if we go over there. You could get more and potentially another delegate. Thank you, ladies. Where do you think you're going? Amy. What about you?
Amy Klobuchar.
See, listen to this. Warren, Amy, Pete. This is where it gets really interesting. The second choice is so important. Who are you going to? We're going to Bernie.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Normal person.
Yeah. All right, now we're talking.
You guys.
There's weirdos down below.
You just scooted by.
Just barely. Go to Bernie.
There's the Biden people.
This is clearly.
Yeah, you were.
What's Joe Crowley doing there?
Biden is electable and Bernie isn't.
You don't think he's electable?
No, but I would vote for him against Donald Trump.
Well, there you go. Elizabeth Warren, she has the most in this caucus so far.
It doesn't surprise me, and I would vote for her gladly, certainly ahead of Bernie.
Got it. So when you go make the pitch to the Yang voters or the Steyer voters, what do you say to get them to elect?
I'm not getting up. I'm just sitting there.
I think that's what all Democrats focus on, is they need somebody who can beat Donald Trump.
So your top priority is beating Donald Trump?
No, that's my only priority.
Only priority. Thank you, sir, very much.
Dramatic.
Great. So
Yep.
let's take an aerial view of this.
Yeah, and I mean, how do you continue to support Biden if he keeps losing as being the most winnable?
And try to convince people to vote. I'm good. How are you?
Damn, did you guys get those numbers?
Guys, because it's
Which numbers? The numbers that she had on her
on the yellow paper, yeah.
You know, I didn't miss them. Did anybody catch those? We're going to look for it on Twitter. I'm going to just grab a slice of pizza and another beer. No me.
It was all me now? I wanted a bathroom first. So Ben.
Let's listen in.
Yes. Oh, no, how are you?
Good. Well, I will say one thing. This is, I think, the magic of Iowa. I'm a very pro-caucus person, only because I was convinced on the Unity Reform Commission by Jane Klebb and actually several Iowa people that I mean, it's magical. If you've been to a caucus, this is what it is. It's an exercise in democracy. You know, when it comes to turnout, if you fix those accessibility problems, which are doable, they did in Washington State, then, you know, you really have the opportunity of bringing access to Iowa, to the caucuses, to other people. But what I think is so magical is that the data people, the people who make all this money in politics, can't figure it out. That's what I love. This is like, you know, of course they want to be able to control the outcome.
Right. Well, what's magical beyond the data, right? So I can feel the energy, right? I can feel the vibe in the room. It's got to be an experience. I've never been to a caucus, but just looking at it, it looks like it's more about the energy and the experience than anything else. Is that why you think they hang on to it so much? Because the accessibility problem is really a problem, as well as just the ability for people to come throughout the day at their leisure versus having to come at a certain set time. What do you think is holding everyone to the caucus?
So I think it was decided on by the state. There's a culture in Iowa in particular of this is what they value. They like being first in the country. They like the ability, the expression of democracy, the accessibility stuff. You know, now you can do satellite caucusing. There is different type of caucusing. There were some struggles this time around. The DNC dropped the ball because they're spending all the money on hiring trolls to go after Bernie people. But they were supposed to have web caucusing for people who, you know, aren't able to make it out, who are, you know, other forms of like absentee caucusing, for folks who are working. You know, of course, we have to reform the entire electoral system. It's not just caucuses.
I'm looking online now, and I just really want to ask this question again. Do you all think that the establishment really didn't think Bernie Sanders would have the type of momentum that would be a threat to them? Because if that is the case, then I think they have proven the case of how incompetent they are politically speaking. Because I think anyone on the outside looking in clearly understood that Bernie Sanders was going to really be able to go the distance here.
I'm on team. I think they knew, and that's why there's so many people running. I don't know. Maybe I'm just used to multi-way primaries and like, you know, I saw the DNC chair's race and how they maneuvered that. I was in a multi-way primary. I experienced that. There's a lot of partnering and behind the scenes deals. So I just think that the consultant force that's running the DNC and like the people in the media who put all the consultants on TV, like they know what's going on and they wanted to stop Bernie and they feel it. That's why they hate when people go after them on Twitter and call out their records.
I got to be honest with you. I think I think they thought Bernie had a ceiling,
right?
And was literally just incomprehensible for them. And I think they thought that the real threat was Warren, and it could still be. I mean, for them. But I can tell you that, you know, I have half a foot in that world. I observe. I don't necessarily participate, but observe in certain situations. Often online, and I am always just stunned at like the surprise of, you know.
But like, who are those people? I mean, are these consultants? Or are these just you know, like Marcos Malitzis of the Daily Kos world?
They're more like establishment writers and journalists and fundraisers. And
the people who are never on the ground, in other words.
The people who are never on the ground. People who are, I've sat in rooms, you know, like it's a complete sort of, it was a fluke, but in rooms with folks who were candidates who have subsequently dropped out, who were sitting in a room with like big fundraisers, and I would just sit there and I would be very, very quiet. Yeah. And literally they would not even raise Bernie as a concern because it was just like, it was like saying, like, I don't know, that Dennis Kucinich was going to come out of retirement. Like, as far as they're concerned, like, yeah, maybe there's 15% that we can't count on. That's fine. There's 85%. That's what we're fighting for. There was never, like, even, I mean, you know, I've been in these rooms where I'm just like, you know, like, Sam, be quiet. There's no point in convincing anybody. You're just here to listen and find out what the thinking is. And it was always shocking.
There's a large group.
Go ahead.
There's a large group that actually has a vested interest in making sure everyone thinks that Bernie isn't viable. Like, as you were talking, it just reminded me of that consulting class. I mean, their jobs are based on whether or not they can get attached to a campaign. And so they have to convince the other people that their campaign, that Bloomberg is viable, that Biden, even though he is not electable, they have to convince everyone that he is electable. And part of that calculus is convincing people that Bernie is not going to sell to the nomination. So, you know, even as I pose the question, if you really sit down and think about the players in the room, like you're describing, they don't get paid unless they convince other people that their campaign is the campaign that's going to win.
Right.
But they don't have to walk into a room and convince anybody that Bernie's not going to win, because that's like the default, right? I mean, they have to do a lot of the other stuff you're talking about. But I guess my point is that they literally didn't even feel like they had to convince anybody not to run against, not to vote for Bernie, because I think they felt like there are people who are going to vote for Bernie regardless of what we say, but there's nobody else.
I think they're the people that are in the bubble, the Jennifer Rubins and even like the more Democratic, the New York Times editorial board, the Mara Gays, they're in the bubble. And then there are the people who are feeding the bubble. And those are the consultants for Hillary Clinton who know very well what the threat of Bernie was down. I mean, I'm not talking about the consultants that lost, the ones who were fighting,
right?
The ones who were on that Unity Reform Commission. And maybe I was just too up close to be like, no, they know what the threat of Bernie Sanders is. Otherwise, I mean, Kamala Harris knows the threat of Bernie Sanders. She was fighting off Bernie people online in August of 2000. What are we in 2007? 2018, 2017 even, when she was floating her name. They know. I mean, Cory Booker, early on getting attacked for his pharmaceutical money, could never recover because he is in that generational spot where he had to choose between being a progressive or having the backing of the funders.
But I would say this. The last thing that those guys are going to communicate during their campaign is that Bernie's a problem.
Totally.
Right? Because it's completely not in their interest to even communicate that. And they certainly may not be like going out there and pressing it now because like...
It's psychological.
What's the reaction that people are going to give them? Like, wait, now you're coming to tell me?
That guy being like, well, Bernie's not electable.
Down. Right.
If you looked at the polls in the last 5 years...
Right. I mean, and all of the questions about Bernie are starting to be baked into the cake when you look at these pollings. Like, look, we don't know. Nobody knows who is electable and who is not. There is nobody who knows that because there's no one who has the ability to see the future. Everybody's taking a guess.
I went to my astrologist.
Some are more educated than others. Your astrologist might. But nobody knows for sure. It's just really like you're going by data and then you're going by sort of like more subjective arguments. Right. And the thing is that they have yet to formulate an argument, a subjective argument that is sort of that carries any weight. I mean, you can say the American public does not want to vote for a socialist. But the problem is that there's polling out there that we now have where people say where Bernie Sanders is described as a socialist.
Right.
And they say, like, I don't like socialists, but I like Bernie.
Yeah.
But I like Bernie.
And look,
that's baked into the system now.
I mean, I was circulating the other day a screenshot of some paper from North Carolina, in October of 2008, John McCain says Barack Obama is a socialist.
Right.
And I got some,
Well, it's interesting because, like, I think this is something the mainstream media misses and it's in their interests. When you're running in primaries, it in the Republican Party, it used to be that it came down to guns, gays, and God, right? It never really worked that way for the Democratic primary, ever. And it definitely doesn't work for the Democratic base, which needs to turn out in the general to beat the Republican side. So I think the power of Bernie Sanders talking about economic issues is that he actually inspires the base that's been depressed in the Democratic Party, which is the weapon against Donald Trump. So Donald Trump can use the word socialist all he wants, but it's only going to hit a sliver of a base that he already has.
That's exactly right. I mean, if the argument is, and it's obviously not 100% one way or another, but if the argument is that this election, broadly speaking, broad strokes, is going to be won by the side that mobilizes all their potential universe of voters, because the way that Hillary Clinton lost was because not enough Democratic voters. I mean, I think, Trump was able to run up his tally relative to Mitt Romney's in areas that weren't necessarily in play. Right. In the places where Trump won, it wasn't necessarily that he outperformed Mitt Romney that much. It was Hillary Clinton underperformed Barack Obama. And so the idea of socialists, if it doesn't work in the Democratic primary, it's not necessarily going to depress votes in the general election in the way that it needs to.
Exactly.
And it's not like, it's conceivable that there may be voters who would otherwise, Republicans in the suburbs who are like, I'm just not going to vote because I can't pull the trigger but the last time they felt that, I don't like either one of these candidates. I hate them both. They voted for Trump. This time they may not vote. They may not vote. And Bernie theoretically will be bringing people out. We'll see.
That's a big thing in this election, though. Even though Bernie Sanders is a socialist, I mean, that has been watered down significantly. They've been calling people socialists since Barack Obama. Everything from a socialist, communist, Maoist, Leninist, fascist, right? They use that combination so much that we're almost inoculated against that. But then Bernie Sanders has something else that no one else has, and that is people just have an affinity to believe him and trust him and respect him because of his consistency. And I've heard a lot of people use this phrase, like, I may not agree with all of its policies, but I agree with the man and I agree with the character. And so even the attack, it's not sticking, but even if it has any momentum, people really can look past that because if they can say nothing else, they say that they can trust Bernie Sanders. And I think that's going to be a factor in this election that we're really not considering.
Especially with a man under impeachment. And I mean, all Bernie would have to do is just, and Biden can't do this, is just show the lies, the consistent lies, just ads full of lies by Donald Trump and say, who do you trust? I mean, I don't know who that wins, what demo that wins, but, it's something to reinforce the narrative.
I will say this, that I have been, surprised at Joe Biden's durability, that he's actually
still pumping.
I mean,
I agree.
That's fair.
Assume that he did. Well, no, I'm not talking about physical durability. I'm talking about the fact that up until this point, we're still talking about Joe Biden as, maybe the presumptive front runner. I mean, we're very close. I'm surprised by that. Simultaneously, I am surprised at how clearly he is, or I should say, how much riskier a proposition he seems to me to be. So honestly, a year ago, if you had said this, I would have said, Joe Biden, he's not going to make it until September of 2019 because people hate Joe Biden. And I would have thought a year ago, he's electable without a doubt. He can win, but I just don't think that people like him in the Democratic primary. I don't think he's going to go very far. He's gone further than I assumed, but with I think just an obvious inability to actually do it. I mean, I think it's it's not just that he, doesn't perform well and he's in these situations. A Joe Biden from 10, 15 years ago, given the opportunity to go testify in these impeachment hearings, would have been damn straight I will. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to tell these people what's what. And I'm going to say, I mean.
What's amazing about this is Joe Biden has run for president a couple times now, right?
Yep.
This is his third time,
this
I believe.
Is
third or fourth?
At least third, yeah.
Third time.
88, 2008
and 2019. So basically it's an every decade sort of thing, with exception to one decade.
He missed 20 years in the middle, but he's he's a long storied career.
But, he pulled out of those races fairly early. I mean, given the strength of his political, his muscle back then in his brain, he pulled out early. And he's in a situation now, granted he's been vice president and he has more, cards, or I don't know what reference you want to use. This is the point where he probably should be pulling out. So his character is actually more cautious in presidential races when he had more strength. He has less strength now, with exception to being vice president, and he is staying in. I mean, he has pulled away from multiple arguments. He's weathered the storm. I mean, through the touchy-feely stuff, he really weathered the storm and stayed strong. And that's kind of the trick in modern day politics now, is to weather the storm, right?
I think it's also a function, frankly, of just money. And I think that when
he doesn't have any. He's not doing great.
But I think when this outside pack,
that's okay.
When all the outside expenditures lined up and said we're coming, this is the cavalry. It's an anemic one, I think, but it is a cavalry. I think that's why he's still in. If he had said, like, I don't care what happens, I'm staying to my pledge, no outside expenditures, no super PACs, I think he'd be out of the race by now. But I think that's why he's doing it, because
how much money all these billionaires are going to save with Bloomberg.
Yeah, it's true.
And I actually think he's seriously believing the hype of his firewall in South Carolina. He repeats that on a regular basis, the support that he has from the African American community. But one thing that you can see with with Joe Biden's numbers is that more people are only supporting him because they believe he can win. And the more people saw him in debate performances, and the more videos get around of his interaction with voters, and he just doesn't seem to have the wherewithal. Right? I'm not trying to be ageist, but 10 years ago, yes. But today, Joe Biden, no. And I think the more people see him, the more they realize he can't win, particularly if he has to go through 3 debates with Donald Trump. And that's why we're seeing Bernie Sanders closing that gap in South Carolina. But Joe Biden at the core really believed that he had a viable path if he could just survive to South Carolina. And that's why today, when that video came out of him, his handler carrying him out of Iowa, his language spoke to that specifically. He said, we're going to survive. And that's what he's trying to do. He's just trying to survive till he gets to his firewall. But I think he's going to have a surprise once he hits South Carolina.
Well, I'll tell you, if he comes in fourth in Iowa, it's not going to be much of a surprise. I think that we're going to see. I mean, he's only down by 5. He's only up by 5 right now in South Carolina. And I think even if somebody had said 6 months ago that Joe Biden's only going to beat Bernie Sanders by 5 points in South Carolina, I think people would be like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And, the closer you get to things, the more you, and this works on all of us, I think, it's like the more your thinking becomes, motivated. And, the parameters you set up at one point change. And then, you get back to them at one point is always the way. I don't know. I've experienced this stuff is whatever I thought at the beginning of this thing was far more, it ends up being far more correct than what I do as we get into it.
Interesting.
I mean, that's, you forget those sort of obvious dynamics.
Yeah, your emotions get, and all the drama along the way. I mean, we get so caught up in the daily drama, it's death by 1,000 cuts to our psyche, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm taking a bathroom break.
All right, go ahead. Why don't we take some
and a pizza break.
Some calls. Calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 478.
Hello, Sam. Hello, this is Jeff in Georgia. I'm sorry, I'm not in Iowa, Sam.
Jeff in Georgia. That's okay. Always a pleasure to hear from you.
Hey, man, I do want to stay on topic tonight. I really appreciate your coverage, both tonight and all the time. My favorite show, for real. In all seriousness, I kind of want to run something by you, though, that I've been thinking about. I appreciate that we've been talking about policy for months, policy differences between the campaigns in the Democratic Party. And policy is very important to me, obviously. I think it's both a vessel and a mirror for what I actually think politics is really about, because I don't actually think politics is really about policy. Politics, broadly speaking, is about people, why they come together, for what purpose, for what reason, and what class are those people, and what class interests do they have in mind. And as we await results for the Iowa Caucus, and we've spent months debating on whether or not this platform is progressive enough or left enough, or that platform is progressive enough or left enough, I just want everyone to take a moment and recognize the fact that there is one candidate by far and away in front of the rest of the pack on this issue, whose coalition is more racially diverse, more working class, more broad-based, and small d democratic. And that is what beats fascism. Period. It's the only surefire way to defeat fascism. And that's what we're facing in this country, and that's what we're up against tonight. And so I really hope Iowa don't let us down on this.
I mean, you're making, I mean, I agree with you, but you're making an electability argument, right? I mean, when you say that this type of coalition is the only one that can beat fascism, you're making an electability argument.
I guess in a narrow sense I am, but I also mean more broadly historically. Fascism has been defeated only when there's a huge, broad democratic movement against it of many, many people who are willing to stand up and say, no, we reject this. And we're going to, resist this in the name of democracy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I mean, I don't mean to be, I'm not being nitpicky, but I think that's, I mean, that is, and I think it's a valid one. It's an electability argument backed up by historical data, essentially. And in this context.
I'm sorry if I came off the wrong way. I do think electability is very important because we saw the other strategy. Hillary Clinton had her ideas of electability. Chuck Schumer has his ideas of electability. Right. Barack Obama even had his ideas of electability. They worked out pretty good for him, not so much for the rest of his party, right? And that is kind of why we are where we're at now. And their model clearly has failed. This model is the only one that is left to try.
Well, I would also argue, though, that it's an electability argument. I think there are other paths to electability. I mean, Barack Obama had a different path. I mean, he was populist, but he certainly wasn't, to the extent that he was, sort of driving a diverse coalition of people. It wasn't necessarily in the same way that Bernie Sanders intends to do. But I think the other thing that's really important here is if Sanders can win in this way, there is at least an argument that it's going to have relevance as in terms of a legislative majority, in terms of how it impacts the ability, the pressures that are exerted on lawmakers. Right now, if the Democrats don't control the Senate and the House, we know what obviously there's extreme limitations for everyone. If they control the Senate and the House, there's going to be challenges in terms of Democrats who are not on board. But the fact of the matter is that regardless of how many conservative Democrats we have, there's always going to be some that are on the precipice. And to watch a Bernie Sanders outperform other people in places, let's say, like West Virginia, maybe, I don't know if he will or won't, but that's the theory, will have implications. I mean, this is one of the things I've always said that I think never got the attention that it deserved, because there were a dozen reasons why Hillary Clinton lost that election. But when you look back on how they were not trying to tie Paul Ryan to Donald Trump, and you look back on the statements of for every vote we lose, blue collar vote we lose in Pittsburgh, and I think was it Rendell or Schumer that said this? I think it was Rendell. We're going to get 2 or 3 Republicans in the suburbs. I think, and you look at Chuck Schumer saying in October, I've got Schumer. This is almost a direct quote. I've got Schumer, I've got Clinton, I've got Ryan, and we're going to do a deal for infrastructure money with that repatriation of money that's been held offshore by corporations. They wanted to fashion a victory that would allow them the political space to make such a deal with Paul Ryan. They wanted to fashion a victory where they took some of Paul Ryan's support as a way of leveraging and getting him to the table. And by Paul Ryan, I don't mean specifically his district. I think I'm saying in terms of the Republican Party. And so they were conscious. We don't hear this much, but I'm quite convinced they're conscious of the electorate they win with has implications from a legislative perspective. And
yes, and exactly the reverse.
And if that's the dynamic,
in a way that they're resistant to, I agree. Yes.
And if that's the dynamic, then that dynamic can also take the form in other ways, where if I have an electorate that is undercutting part of the Republican support,
That's right.
but it's not the support they get from the suburbs necessarily, because maybe we can take some of that for granted this time. Maybe not. But it's coming from their white working class base, or, and of course you've got to combine that with being able to bring out the base of the Democratic Party in a way that didn't happen in places like Milwaukee and Detroit, in Philadelphia. But if I can also,
can I just say one more thing about electability in that vein, and because I feel like I've taken up a ton of your time already, but electability. I know that you do not see it this way, but I know many commentators, when they talk about electability, and perhaps when just people think about electability, they think about it in terms of winning an electorate that already exists.
That's right.
And is somewhat static. It does not change easily. It's a population that's already defined. And so you find a candidate that appeals to enough of those people in the right amount of states, or, depending on what kind of race you're running, Senate, president, whatever, to get power. And that's the game. Playing that game,
well,
the Democrats.
I've just given you evidence.
It hasn't worked out, and
I've just given you evidence.
Only candidate ready to turn that apple cart up. Sorry,
but I've just given you evidence that the people who espouse that theory are either lying or uninformed, because Ed Rendell surely understood there was a different theory, which is we're going to sacrifice this group of people who have been a consistent, support for Democrats, because we're going to get two others there. And when Chuck Schumer is bragging a month before the election that he already has, and he's referring to himself in third person, Schumer and Ryan and Clinton, and they're going to make a deal already. He's already projecting forward as to what's going to be influencing Paul Ryan.
What if, say,
you going to run against him, man? It kind of sounds like it.
Jeff, thanks so much for the call. Really appreciate it.
Wait, what if you have...
I'm focused on Iowa. Always a pleasure, buddy. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Sam. You guys have a good one.
Take care.
What if you had a Bernie Sanders win, and it signaled, in the primary he wins, and you have all these populists running across the country right now, left populists running for Congress, for Senate, and it gives them a big boost. Maybe we move one senator in a dream world, or we do next time around. And as you said, the dynamic shifts on the Democratic Party. The power base shifts, or at least becomes more balanced between the left populists and the centrists. And as a result, the deal making shifts in the Republican Party. So then suddenly, if you have big business negotiating with big business, I can't imagine populists negotiating with big business on the right. It's like the Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders dynamic. Will it also happen in the Republican Party? The power center will flip.
I mean, I don't know. I'd have to really sort of map it out. And I think it really sort of depends on the specifics. I mean, if Bernie Sanders goes in and gets outperforms any Democrat in Kentucky by, I'm just, pulling numbers out of my arse here, but, 10 or 15 points. If I'm up for re-election, I'm a senator or I'm a House member in 2022, I'm starting to worry, wait a second, who's my electorate now?
But if you want to win those Senate seats this time around, Bernie Sanders is the best option for you as a down ticket Democrat, because he's exciting a new electorate that doesn't arrive, and possibly Republicans.
I mean, I will be able to answer that question better, I think, when you look at the primary results. Right. I mean, that's what Bobby Big Wheel was just basically telling us. There are certain districts where you can get a sense based on their demographic makeup, how he's going to perform in these districts. Mm-hmm. Now, Republicans are different than Democrats. And just because you perform well in a Republican district amongst Democrats does not mean that you're going to perform well in a general there. But one of the things that is probably true more so now than in past races is that these Democrats, like that dude sitting in the well saying, I don't have, it's not my priority. It's not my top priority. It's my only priority.
Right.
Mm-hmm. These Democrats and probably even more so in the context of right-wing districts and states, are sensitive as to what their neighbors, who are not Democrats, might be open to. Right? I'm living in Iowa.
Yeah.
Surrounded by it's a purplish state with a little red hue, maybe. I know my neighbor across the street. I sit and I talk politics with him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's not so Trump friendly, but he does speak glowingly of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
That's why I'm voting for Bernie Sanders, because I am playing the role of a pundit, as we are now seeing like all of these people doing. Who's going to win in the general election?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my cues not necessarily from other Democrats and not necessarily from the full-on hardcore Trumpers. I may be getting my cues from people who I think are convincible in the general election. I mean, that's a theory. And if we see certain Democratic constituencies within purple, reddish states choosing someone based upon electability, what's the data in which they're getting that electability? Well, they're looking at the people who voted for Trump that they know or sat out the last election and seeing what they would do.
All signs.
Do you think they were actually making that deep of analysis of it, though, Sam? I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I think there's a large swath of people who are determining electability based on Joe Biden, obviously, with being the VP for Barack Obama, and to them, that simply means electability. Where do you think that they're actually drawing this information from?
I mean, I think it's probably different in different constituencies. Frankly.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that guy on TV was a fall in line older white male voter, probably a little higher income if I, can just calculate that. So he's going to vote against Trump. He might also vote for Bloomberg. He said he was the last person he was choosing was Bernie Sanders, but he would vote for Democrat.
The fact is like, I know that, speaking of myself, I'm walking around Brooklyn and, to the extent that I have opportunity to talk to somebody who, didn't vote for the, Hillary Clinton last time, or it would be, sort of, they are a full-gone Trumper. Like they're like, I'm not
Astoria.
Right. Well,
that's
right.
Trump
Exactly.
won Astoria and Bernie won Astoria.
Exactly. I mean, I maybe like my point is that I'm not necessarily the best to note that, although, when I'm upstate quite a bit, there's a different perception up there too. It really depends on, I think, certain areas in terms of like how exposed they are to Trump voters, because you can have pockets of Democratic voters whose neighbors aren't, that it's not, 60%, Trump and 40% or 45%, Democratic and 55% Republican. In those areas, you're going to have a better sense of what the Republicans want. In other areas, I mean, just because, and it's not even like you're sitting there going, with a spreadsheet going like, I've talked to 35 Republicans this week. And it's just that, like, in the course of your daily life, half the people you come across a little bit more are, Republican voters, let's say, or, independents or whatever, however they ID themselves. And over the course of those conversations, you just come to the conclusion that, like, I think, they seem open to Bernie. And that's how that happens. I don't think it's, as sophisticated as...
But there is an analysis. I mean, as a person who doesn't love data but looks at data, like it does, like if you look at a place like I grew up in Buffalo, New York, outside of Buffalo, New York, it's a very heavy Trump place, very heavy. But even in districts where they're white men who make above, $150,000, he did very well with, as well as the low-educated, low-income white men in Buffalo. But the key factor is, I mean, there's this whole thing like blame white women for voting for Trump. Part of that is because upper-income white women voted with their upper-income white men in those districts. And so they're not higher educated, though. So it's like a weird that take out education and they're a Trump voter if they're upper income. Put in education, they're voting for Hillary. So all these factors, and of course, these people live around each other. So you are a reflection of your community, and you live in places based on where you want to live, I live in Socialist Center of America, in AOC's area, in Astoria, because why not?
I mean, it's...
You're in Park Slope.
Yeah.
Because obviously... No, I don't know if you are.
But I mean, the point being, Brooklyn is going to, is going to give you a limited perspective as opposed to living in Iowa. And maybe there are parts of Iowa where you don't really get a broad perspective of stuff too. So let's listen to this guy's really been taking a beating tonight.
He's defending Michael Bloomberg from accusations that he was an oligarch.
What's his name again? Jason Johnson.
Jason Johnson.
Trump if you can't figure out how he got in. So that's also where this anxiety is coming from. I can see some 20-year-old thinking to themselves, babies in cages, I got to stop this, but who's the best person to stop it? That's a real amount of stress
and
to deal with.
There's a lot of stuff that is brand new. I mean, to have Michael Bloomberg in the race, I mean, he's technically, we're saying he's not playing in Iowa. People could be caucusing for Michael Bloomberg tonight if they wanted to in Iowa. He's not in Iowa tonight. Neither are a handful of other candidates who thought they weren't going to be competitive here. But he's not competing in Iowa by spending $250 million to get himself into double digits nationwide.
I mean, how in Iowa and you saw the Super Bowl yesterday, you saw Mike Bloomberg out. So you're right. He is already in the race.
So there's a lot that has never happened before that is happening right now. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back in, we are into the second hour of these caucuses.
Let's play this
trying
clip
to work it out in terms of who's going to
that
get
Brendan just pulled. This, I think, wow, this is just, this is pretty nuts. Here is Chris Matthews. Can we pull this up from earlier tonight? As to, we have seen everything from, well, now that we have a sense that Bernie might win, the Iowa caucus don't mean much, to now.
It's hilarious.
Here we go. This is the latest thing as to why Sanders is going to win.
Election out here in Iowa, it's not exactly a primary, it's not a general election. It requires going to a meeting basically for up to 3 hours. And it does have certain advantages for candidates like Bernie Sanders, because as Oscar Wilde beautifully put it once, socialism is going to be hard to catch on because it takes too many meetings. But a meeting is perfect if you're Bernieite. This is a perfect setting for him, and therefore he should do well tonight. That's my thinking. It's a unique home game for zealotry, for people on the socialist side of things, because they like meetings, according to Oscar Wilde. Election out here in Iowa.
All right, so
sorry, as the literary hangover correspondent.
Hold on 1 second.
Wow.
This just in.
That's not a real Oscar Wilde quote.
Wow.
Fact check.
Yeah, check out the Soul of Man Under Socialism episode of Literary Hangover if you want more.
Is that actually a quote from somebody, though?
It's from somebody. It's often attributed to Wilde, but that's not in any of Wilde's.
Bam!
Who's the oligarch of
Wilde was
time?
a socialist himself, actually.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this. Oscar Wilde also said, one of the things that socialists like is they like colder areas, and that's why he's going to do well in New Hampshire, right? They're like
white
this
people.
whole idea of sending people to Siberia and this and that. That's why he's going to do well in New Hampshire.
He's from Vermont. I mean,
right? He's so close. He's so close. Of course, he's going to win there. It's South Carolina where the real test is. I mean, that's.
Until it's not.
I mean, I don't really know how to
respond. That's embarrassing if you're MSNBC for them to go on there and say.
You know what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to venture to guess. Incorrect. Not embarrassing if you're MSNBC. No.
Hey, you have to be on tonight. Be
I
nice.
was going to say, watch it, Sam.
Well, I mean, I don't know that they'll be watching me at 1 in the morning, and B, that they're watching me now.
Right now.
So,
I know who is watching you.
Whoop. Well, I can tell you, listen, that's one of the upsides of my Mike Cernovich employment program, that it gives me a little
secure for a little while. Huh?
Yeah, it gives me a little bit of security going forward. We're going to talk to.
What do you think Chris Matthews' problem really is, though, Sam? Because Chris is going to have a breakdown between tonight and tomorrow morning. What do you think is his real beef with Sanders? Do you think
I think that
income is threatened?
No, I don't think he feels his income is threatened. I mean, I think that I don't think someone contemplates. I mean, I think if you were going to be rational about it, you would say Bernie's going to be constrained. by at least in terms of legislation and big things like that by the Democratic Party. I think that would not be a hard thing for Matthews to conclude and to people of money. I mean, I think they would be worried about it, but I think really for Matthews and for people of similarly situated, they have a long time association with, and saying the Democratic Party is a very hard thing to say, right? Because who is the Democratic Party? But they have a long time association with the people who have held the power and the prestige within the party.
Including his wife, who is the former Maryland chair of the Democratic Party.
Right. And I think, but also,
overlaps the Beltway.
Yes, but I think that he probably met his wife because he was similarly situated, not necessarily as the chairman, but he was working for, on Ways and Means, and he was, working for Tip O'Neill, who was his
entire life.
I mean, Tip O'Neill was the sort of the quintessential controller of the Democratic Congress, and the Democrats controlled the House for decades.
He's a child of the DLC, that era,
No, pre-DLC.
You're right. Oh, you're right.
Pre-DLC.
No, but I mean, it's that generation. It's that he came up with.
It's not that he's corporatist. It is that, I mean, he may be, but
it's just that corporations pay his bills.
Well, no, I understand that. But it's not that he's corporatist. I don't think that's his motivating factor. I think it is that he was, and I think this is it. Maybe this is a too fine of a distinction. I mean, I think there are certainly people who are sort of more motivated by corporatism. But I think when he sees a guy like Bernie Sanders, he sees the guy who they sat in the congressional office. And to the extent that they even thought about these people, it was like, we got to step over them to get into our office. We've got to, because they're lying down again on the, or they've chained themselves.
Right.
Or they're the guys who are making it hard for us because we're trying to do something with no concept of necessarily. And I think it's really just about a certain narcissism that is bred when you are at the center of things. And he was at the center of things for a long time. I mean, to be working on Tip O'Neill's staff, anybody who needed something had to come to you. And these people weren't even in a position to come and ask for anything. And so the idea, it's just like,
I mean, we see it
almost.
We see those people now.
Because we're a bunch of outsiders. If you think about it, Bernie, to me, the more you look at his constituency, they are a bunch of, and I'm one of them, a ragtag outsiders that normally would not have access to political power. And now they're in a position to not only have political power, but to have the most political power, or at least be seated at the table to make and demand concessions. And this is a group of elite. I don't like to throw around elitism, but it's a group of elites that never had to deal with someone who, otherwise would have been shut out of these meetings in the future. So I think that plays a part of this into this as well.
They had to do a lot of kiss ass to get to those positions. And today, I mean, you look at what's really it's illustrative. What's the word? How do you say it? I'm one White Claw in, guys, and I've been on dry January.
I was going to say, how many drinks have you guys had up there?
No, but really, it's the Iowa team from Obama. To me, when I campaigned for Obama in 2008, I was national co-chair in 2012. The people in Iowa, to me, they were the renegades, and now they are part of the machine. They are the ones who worked for the most part. They have consulting firms making a lot of money. They made a lot of money off of Hillary, who I know many of them still to this day don't like. And they resent the Bernie Sanders people. They resent the people who didn't have to go up through the same chain of command that they had to go through.
Absolutely.
Kiss the ass that they didn't have to go through. Right. And frankly, compromise themselves, because I know some of them used to have souls.
Yep.
And they have.
But if they came in with Obama, though, didn't they come in the same way? Like they came in bucking the system. I mean, Obama didn't.
It was not the same.
Much bucking.
Not the same. They were like John Edwards people that went over to Obama, or they were. Who else was around?
Barack Obama would not have run if there wasn't elements of the establishment. I mean, it was basically you had two, the Hatfields and the McCoys,
right?
But they're basically in the same town, and that is, that's what happened. And there were people who I think did not like Clinton at that moment.
Legitimately outsiders.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't. I wouldn't say that Barack Obama's strength was that people perceived him as an outsider, but he knew that he had basically cracked the code to be an insider.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do not get to be the head of Harvard Law Review by being someone that people who are part of the inside don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
And he, whatever he did or does behind closed doors, he communicated, I'm trustable in some way. I am not going to rock the boat in a fundamental way. And I don't know how he, it could be saying we're going to renegotiate NAFTA, and then he sends Austin Goolsbee up to Canada and saying, "Don't worry." He's just doing that on the campaign. All right, here's the mine. We got some results. I think coming in from Des Moines. Do we have any other results? Do we know any?
I have some right here.
You do?
Let's over to the other campaigns, and we're just going to peek.
What do you have?
Okay, we have right now Sanders is at 1,644 votes. With 25%. So far in is only.
Where is this?
This is all over Iowa. 1.8% is in on the first round. Second round, 1.36. So it really depends on which precinct. But so far, Sanders, Buttigieg, and Warren are doing the best, and Biden's behind. He's fourth.
Can you send that to Matt or to
front page of Real Clear Politics?
And can we keep that up in the corner maybe of that just to get a sense so that we have a running tally? I mean, it's early, folks. It takes a long time because not only does the actual caucus part take time, right? You got to physically do this stuff. Then you've got to, somebody's going to mark it down. There's no electronic
and do the math on it because there's a tally.
In 15 minutes or so, we're going to be talking to Virgil, Texas. We're supposedly going to be talking to Ryan Grimm at one point. I don't know if he's doing a different show. I mean, who knows what the hell is going on down there? But
these people are really afraid of Sanders.
But I guess I thought he would be viable. I didn't doubt that at all. But I didn't think he would be behind Klobuchar.
Ooh, Biden behind Klobuchar.
Pete, perhaps.
That is the sleeper kind of headline of this.
Uh-oh.
Of this particular
She
caucus
shouldn't have
is
said
how
that.
well Amy Klobuchar ended up doing.
Right, of course. It's all about Klobuchar is the story. As opposed to Biden doing so bad that he's coming in fifth.
Early and held a pretty big crowd, pretty big rally up in Council Bluffs. But she's basically only been on TV here. People haven't gotten to see her face to face in the final stretch. So her doing that well.
People who oppose Medicare for All voted for Buttigieg. The people who support Medicare for All, 35% Sanders, 21% Warren, 16% Buttigieg.
In these pews.
Wow.
It may not be a top priority for him. Men, Sanders, Buttigieg, Biden, Warren.
And that's about turnout. Oh wait, hold
in
on.
that order.
We're getting the delegate turnouts.
Hold on.
We'll hear about that tomorrow.
Delegate.
Amy Klobuchar 4, Elizabeth Warren 5, and Joe Biden 3. Those are the delegate counts.
How much did Sanders get?
Awarded from this precinct.
So Elizabeth Warren gets 5.
So Bernie didn't get any from that?
Delegates. One last thought, guys. In terms of turnout,
They said Sanders first, didn't they?
They had around 767 people here. They were prepared for twice that many number, over 1,000. They thought at least at this precinct. They had 849, so turnout was not quite.
But they have
as
more
high
locations
as
now,
they
so they have to.
expected here.
They're
I'm
not being
sure if that
completely
says
accurate about this.
what that says about maybe the
You can't.
But wait a second. Do we know what she said? What the first number she said was?
else to choose for them, but keep that
No,
in
no.
mind. Turnout
I'm
was
saying
not as high as
How many-
expected, although
Sanders
it did
was the
exceed
first name that she
expectations, at least
mentioned.
in this one precinct.
They said
Katie Turf for us
13
in
delegates,
Des Moines,
or
and what is
13,
it?
13 votes.
We will keep an eye on pivotal caucuses.
Let's see if we can find out what that was.
Keep an eye out for the first
Right.
official results. which we are hoping to get at some point during this lifetime from the Iowa Democratic Party. Brian Williams.
I think actually when I'm on MSNBC at like 1 a.m. is actually when they're going to get the results.
New York Times has a new update coming in 3 seconds. They're updating it. But
wonderfully delicious. Palm Wonderful, the antioxidant superpower.
Your mom just texted. She's on her way to our house.
Huh.
What? I got it. Alexa.
I mean, it's Klobuchar.
The Lexus ES. Eagerly prepared for
Let's take some calls. Let's see where we got here. I'm trying to find some.
My God, I hope we don't have Mayor Pete.
I am going for some Iowa calls. Calling from a 515 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yep. Who's this?
Hey, this is Christian from Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh,
Christian from Des Moines. We were just looking. Were you caucusing tonight?
Yeah, I just got back about an hour ago. Took about an hour and a half. Showed up at 6:30. Things kicked off about 7:15. It was, so first off, okay, so I'll just give you a quick delegate rundown. Warren, 2 delegates. Pete, 2 delegates. Amy, Bernie, and Biden each got 1 delegate.
That is not what we just heard, actually. That's not consistent with what we just heard.
Different location.
Oh, different locations.
It's not just one spot in Des Moines.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologize. Okay.
In my precinct.
Will you say this again? Will you say it again?
So I live in Windsor Heights,
Wait,
which is a small, sorry.
Tell us those numbers again, just so we get a sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my precinct had 7 delegates. Warren and Pete each got 2. And then Amy, Bernie, and Biden each got 1.
Okay.
And I live in Des Moines. I live in Windsor Heights, Iowa, which is a very small suburb of Des Moines. It's about 5,000 people in a city of 225,000 people. Very sort of like mid-high income, very white, older population.
Okay.
And so Pete and Warren definitely had the most enthusiasm in the room. Initially, on the first count, Biden was not viable. And so a couple Biden leaders had to run over to the Yang Gang and convince a couple of them to come over to even become viable in the first round.
Wow.
So that was kind of the shocker of the evening. I was showing up expecting a little bit better turnout for Bernie, but again, I'm a little bit more moderate conservative neighborhood in Des Moines, Iowa.
Interesting. Appreciate the call. That's really interesting.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm seeing some other neighborhoods in Des Moines. I saw some precincts, 95 to 98% of the whole precinct went for Bernie.
Wow.
And some of the ones that I've seen in Des Moines, which is amazing.
Well, we shall see.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Appreciate the
love
call.
you, Naomi. Love you, Ben. Love all you guys. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for calling
Really
in.
interesting. All right, so apparently,
I'm surprised that so many people. Surprised at how many people from Yang have been swayed to go in the opposite direction than Bernie. Does that shock anybody?
I don't think it's enough to make a difference. Looking at the numbers right now, it's such a small number.
It doesn't surprise me.
I'm not surprised, but it's a very
I'm surprised
small
they'd go to
number.
Biden, but I don't know. I think that
He's a capitalist.
Yang, I think, attracts the sort of libertarian contingency that exists within the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying all Yang people are libertarians or all libertarians are Yang people. I'm just saying that sounds like the flavor a little bit.
Are you a capitalist first, or are you an anti-establishment first? That's, I think, the question for the Yang people.
Interesting. Here is Iowa's. This is the first round reporting. Here's Steve Kornacki.
We have 0.
Oh, well, I guess what? We don't. We have, at the very least, the Winter Heights district in Des Moines. We know the tallies there, folks. So we're running a little bit ahead of what MSNBC is reporting. Let's see if we can do a little bit better. Here's 563 area code. I believe you are calling from the northeast portion of the state of Iowa, which, if I'm not mistaken, is
pull out the map.
Is the Jackson, Jones, Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clinton counties area. Is that right?
Is this me?
Yeah.
This is Andrew from 563. Yeah, Dubuque, Iowa, right here.
All right. Andrew from Dubuque. And so what can you tell us about? Did you caucus tonight?
So I'm originally from Dubuque. My dad runs a caucus site, so I just came back over to the state to just kind of observe. And in the precinct we were at, after realignment, it went Pete, Biden, Bernie, Warren. And what I found to be really interesting was that Warren originally wasn't viable, but then after the first realignment, none of her supporters moved. And they actually were able to get a few people to join them, and they made a deal with the Klobuchar folks to provide them a delegate. So I found it interesting that I thought, the progressives would kind of like form a coalition there at the end, but I really felt like there was like a disdain for Sanders. But the Sanders folks, they stood their ground obviously too. But I just thought it was interesting.
That's what the numbers are showing right now. Just looking at the second round, she's doing fairly well. So I mean, Pete's really killing it. He's picking up 28%. Granted, very very few have come in, but 28% by far, and way above.
What? Where in Dubuque? Which area?
I'm not sure the exact precinct, but we're on like the upper middle class end of town. And I even talked to my mom, who's also like on the kind of the outskirts in the suburbs, if you can even call that in such a town like Dubuque. But her precinct went for Buttigieg as well. But you're absolutely right. This is like Buttigieg country. So it's kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I
doing this here.
Appreciate the call.
And the other, one last thing. There was I talked to another Sanders supporter who was just in dismay because he's like, I haven't had a single door knock by a Buttigieg guy, yet he's watching all these people go Buttigieg in the precinct. It's kind of awkward, but yeah.
Wow.
Silent Buttigieg supporters, I think.
All right.
Well, they know they're not going to win the Bernie support. That's, I think, key. Good data.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Okay.
Well,
deep breaths.
Well, I mean, look. Here's the bottom line. We have we have nothing even remotely close to a cross section. We're hearing from specific folks from specific parts of Iowa, and so these are the places where you would expect, right, these people to do well. I think the big story, it seems like Biden is in trouble.
Yeah.
And frankly, that, in my mind, from the perspective of the progressives, broadly speaking, but specifically Bernie too, is good. Biden, we want out.
Yep.
The Biden is the closest, it seems to me, competition to Bernie in many respects, in terms of like, come on, man, and hey, guy, and I'm the guy who, like, that quality of
that demo,
right? And that's, that's an important demo. I'm looking through here to see who we have on the line that is from, and Brendan, help me out if you see somebody, you can IM me, give me a number. 3.
Man.
I'm looking through here and trying to. Should have memorized. I should have tried to memorize the
area codes. I gotta say, the websites, just so you all know, they're very confusing. New York Times is only showing the second alignment, so it's confusing.
I can't glean anything from any of them.
Yeah, I think Real Clear Politics is the best, but it's the slowest, which I guess it should be. But just for anybody who's looking at New York Times, that's the second
35?
alignment on the front page that shows Pete in the lead.
Did you say call 35? I only have 28 on mine. Hold on. Oh, okay. Hold on. I got to wait for mine to refresh. What number are we looking? Oh, yeah. Here we go. 38 now. Sorry. Here we go. Calling from a 515 area code. That's, if I'm not mistaken, the Central Iowa.
Me?
Yeah. Who's this?
Everybody says it's that me, but you can't tell. Yeah, it's Des Moines, south side of Des Moines. My neighborhood is lower income. Windsor Heights is much higher than mine. We only had 4 delegates for my little wee precinct. We had 155 people there, and they ran out of registration forms. We had to wait a half an hour before we could even get started because Polk County didn't have enough registration forms for people to register. But anyway, 155 people. First round, Bernie had 71, and we were all packed in a corner. Biden, Yang, Klobuchar, none of them were even viable. Warren and Buttigieg, you had to have 24 to be viable, and they each had like 20. Well, he had 24, she had 25, and then the Klobuchar people and stuff moved out. But Bernie ended up getting 2 of our delegates, and then Buttigieg and Warren each got 1. But we were the most fired up bunch.
That's amazing. So Bernie comes in there with more than 3 times the amount of his nearest competitor, but ends up leaving with only 2 times as many delegates as the
I have
nearest.
a similar story that Philip Klein, who's reporter, just said. This is crazy. Just as you're telling this. So Philip Klein is at First Presbyterian Church in Des Moines. He was there.
Appreciate the call. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very similar story. So he says he's there when he was there in 2016. Hillary won easily, blah, blah, blah. The location is 86 people. In 2016, it had 138. In 2008, it had 160. So there's more locations this time. Again, how do you play around with this stuff? Initially, it looked like Biden would be viable here, but he gained supporters from Bennett and Steyer, so should make it. Still awaiting first alignment totals. Wow, another twist. Sanders won this precinct by 20 points, but now 5 candidates will get 1 delegate each. Biden team amassed extra delegates and then siphoned them to Klobuchar and Warren. Bernie's supporters are pissed, claiming, quote, "This is a joke, waste of time," and they all stormed out.
So the idea was they were trying to minimize Bernie's win. That's
right.
But here's the bottom line. Again, the actual delegate count, we have been told now by Weigel and by Aaron Kleinman, Bobby Big Wheel, that the actual numbers at the end of the day are not going to be as relevant. Let's hear what this guy is saying because he's reading off his phone.
People from around the gym to become viable again.
Oh, wait a second. He's just watching the Majority Report on the app at majority.app.com. The real issue is what's the order going to be? Right. I mean, if Biden is in, we've got to mitigate Bernie's win mode.
That's a problem for him.
That's a problem for Biden, right? I mean, at that point, it's just sort of they're what we're seeing is the activating of the, ABB, essentially.
So Bernie really should have gone to that Center for American Progress conference that cost him $3,000 to go to because all of the other candidates seem to have gotten the memo. Bernie did not.
I mean, look, the bottom line again, and this is what I was talking about where you get into the thick of things and all of a sudden you move your own goalposts.
It's crazy.
I think the idea is that it's a very good night unless Bernie does not come in first. Mm-hmm. And it's even better night if Joe Biden comes in fourth.
Wait, it's better that Joe Biden comes in fourth than it is for Bernie to come in first? You're saying that?
No. I'm saying those are the 2 measures.
Okay.
Those are the 2 measures. I mean, obviously, if Bernie comes in first and Biden comes in third, it's better than, I think, Bernie coming in second and Biden coming in fourth from the perspective of a Bernie supporter. But getting Biden out of the race, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because he's in there for, the wrong reasons. I'm happy to allow, people on stage to fight it out over sort of ideology and vision and leadership and, hope that the American public can see that, some people are I can't find it on my thing. Boy, I don't know how I'm going to make it.
Ben, are you watching us while you're talking to us?
Calling from a 515 area code.
I'm in the chat room and everything.
Okay, good.
515 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Matt.
Matt.
Hey, how's it going, Sam?
Good. Matt, you're calling from Iowa. You're calling from
I am.
The center of the state.
That's right. I was in Precinct 9. Just a quick delegate count. Bernie won with 3, and then Warren, Pete, and Amy had 2 each.
Precinct 9 and where?
Center of Iowa.
What was that?
Precinct 9 in what town?
It's in Des Moines.
But
it's slightly north of Beaverdale.
Okay, and so Bernie had 3. Give me the number.
Warren, Pete, and Amy had 2 each.
And no Biden.
No Biden.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it was real nice. And they had 23 people there, and they just refused to switch candidates. It was ridiculous.
Wow. All right. People holding
Anyway,
out.
can I do a shout out real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you just had a Christian on a few minutes ago. That's my boy.
Same town.
Like literally your son or just your buddy?
Yeah, he's my buddy.
Oh,
He told me to come on.
All right, great. I wasn't sure what.
Love you guys. Thank
That's
you.
so Iowa of you. Just tell your friend to come on.
All right, can we tell Virgil? Can we punt Virgil for 20 minutes? Is he ready?
Virgil's eating right now, so he's unavailable.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's better than other things he would be doing.
All right, hold on. Ben, why don't you talk to Nomi for a second?
Nomi.
What's up, Ben?
No, I think if anything, like what Sam said about an hour ago. How long have we been on that so far? What he said about an hour ago is really going to be critical tomorrow, because no matter what, the spin is going to be in against Bernie Sanders, right? He can come in first, and they're going to talk about how this is not as important. If he comes in second, it's going to be how devastating this was to Bernie Sanders, and I think it's going to be equally as important to keep the spirits up of Bernie Sanders supporters for us, those of us who have the platforms, to constantly pound not only a narrative, but the accuracy of the narrative of how significant this was or wasn't. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think, one thing that might come out is how unified the Democrats were that decided to work together. I have no idea what's going on, but seeing just some early signs via Twitter and people's accounts and reporters' accounts in the rooms, how they're all teaming up together in the name of defeating Trump or whatever. I mean, who knows what the narrative is going to be at the end of the day. But I do know one thing. If there's any sort of shenanigans, the Bernie people are not going to back down. I mean, we know how solid and loyal Bernie people are to the movement. And I think that's the real issue for Democrats is no matter what happens, right? Bernie is so strong that he is going to last for several months. Nobody else in the race has that. And so they have a real problem on their hands in that it really is a game of how do we push Bernie out and how early can we do it? I think he's going to the convention,
because
in my opinion.
He's going to have the opposite effect of anyone else. If Bernie loses, or if Bernie doesn't come in first place tonight, I guarantee you he's going to have one of the best fundraising weeks of his candidacy.
I have a feeling he's going to have a good fundraising week either way. On the phone, who and I believe is in Iowa right now, is Ryan Grimm? Are you there?
Ryan Grimm.
Ryan? Wait.
Hello?
Hello? The wrong person. Hold on 1 second. Who are you?
Hello?
Hello? We'll get back to you in a second. Sorry. Wrong one. Here we go. I don't know how that happened. We were adding so many people so quickly that the thing is moving, and I'm trying to... There we go. I think I got it. Ryan Grimm, are you there?
I'm there.
Ryan, Nomiki Const is here.
Hi.
Nomiki Const and Ben Dixon on the phone, and we're taking calls from folks in Iowa. Who are actual Iowans who have participated in the caucus. Did you watch one?
Yeah, I watched 2.
And
actually.
What did you observe?
Well, the first one I watched was at Drake University, and so there were a lot of students, and so it wasn't a surprise that Bernie annihilated everybody there, and Warren was the only other viable person. But the one I just came from now was quite fascinating because it's a kind of black working class neighborhood in Des Moines that went 5-3 for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and this time Bernie Sanders blew it out. Didn't just win a plurality, had a majority, and the Warren people had to kind of beg and plead with the Buttigieg people who were not viable to link up with them.
Wait,
and they
what?
just barely
Pete
crossed
wasn't
the
viable
threshold.
in a black community?
That's shocking. Hold on for a second. Wait a second.
It was strange. It was strange.
We got a breaking news.
Nobody had heard of them.
Oh, I love.
That's fascinating because
he's still introducing himself.
we have heard from 4 different folks who are in the caucuses. Des Moines, 3 places in Des Moines and 1 in Dubuque. For the most part, 3 of those places were a little bit more moneyed, as it were. In the more moneyed version, Warren and Pete 2, Amy, Bernie, and Biden 1. In Dubuque, it went Pete, Biden, Bernie, Warren not viable. On the south side of Des Moines, not a particularly wealthy area, Bernie 2, Buttigieg 1, and Warren 1. But the story about that was almost 75% of the people at the beginning were for Bernie. And there was some horse trading that sort of like mitigated that win. The Biden people apparently were handing out their delegates to the other candidates to make sure that they got viable.
Right. Yeah.
But it feels like it's so early. It feels like the story is Biden is bombing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, he's totally bombing. And not only is he bombing what you said, like this one right here. So like this was like Hillary Clinton country in 2016. Like this is what he says is his base of support. And he walked out of here with 25% in a working class black precinct. That's brutal when he's been claiming this like overwhelming support among the black community.
Yeah, that doesn't bode well for
black voters. Sam, let me just say this. Black voters, if nothing else, we're pragmatic, right? I think Biden's fatal flaw is that he assumed that we just were going to go with him. But the fact that the only reason people went with him initially is because they thought he was electable. And the more we saw that he was unelectable, the more his support from the black community wavered. So I think that's a phenomenon that he's not expecting, but I think that's one that we, who are on the progressive side, we've been counting on that.
Well, I mean, I think...
And he also he also didn't do any work here, and several people said that to me, that not only did he not show up here, but he doesn't have any volunteers either who showed up in his community. Wow. Whereas Bernie Sanders did, and that meant a lot. And that means a lot, particularly to Iowans, who are very precious about the attention that they want every 4 years for having this first caucus. And so, this one pastor who was walking in, so who are you supporting? He said Bernie Sanders. He said, why? He said, well, he showed up.
Yeah.
Nobody else did.
There you
go. Brian, let me get a sort of maybe a 30,000 foot view. Now, we have spoken on this program today to at least 2 experts who have said similar things, that the actual delegate count is less relevant here because of the sheer numbers are just not that much, than the sort of like spin that comes out of here and the sort of almost like the pole position, if you were, coming out of here in terms of, and then a sort of like a more granular view on where people won as a data point in terms of where else they can win down the road. What's your sense of the Iowa caucus, broadly speaking?
Well, as to what's going to happen, I can't really tell you because I was very focused on this particular precinct the last couple hours, 2 hours. But I think you're right that everybody's going to probably be, bunched somewhat together unless Bernie just completely blows it out. And the delegate counts are going to be close. As you're seeing, people are walking out of these caucuses with, one delegate for two delegates for this person, 2 for that. Nobody's really, going to be running away with it in that sense, but they're going to be releasing the vote numbers. And so I think you're going to see Bernie touting that if he can show
that first round of voting numbers,
votes or something. Right.
I have a question.
And that's new.
So Ryan, this is Nomi. Right now, looking at, and granted, it's still pretty early. Bernie is taking the first round. He's very close, neck to neck with Buttigieg in the second round. If Bernie consistently, stays around, that number, he's safe, right? If he gets the first round and close enough in the second round.
He should be. Yeah,
as the winner.
It depends on.
And Warren is above
Right,
that 15% too. So, you end up having Pete, Warren, and Sanders.
Right.
Yeah.
And the key thing to remember too, there are more non-rich districts than there are rich precincts. Yeah. So even as you hear stories about the rich precincts where Bernie's getting clobbered, if we had more rich precincts, then we wouldn't have Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think anyone is doing some the precinct captains maybe doing some bad calculus in this realignment? Because I see in the realignment Pete surges beyond Bernie Sanders, right? But in the long run, I don't think that Pete is an actual threat to Bernie Sanders. Of course, this could be his night in Iowa. There'll be a great narrative, but sending those delegates over to Pete may not have been the best calculus to stop Bernie Sanders in the long run. What do you think?
Right. I think what's really important to understand is that these folks are not. Oh, hold on 1 second. Holiday. They're not listening to a precinct captain. They're not an organized army.
Okay.
They're
folks?
people who are showing up and deciding to support. A lot of them in the moment say Buttigieg or Biden or Warren, and then they're getting lobbied by everybody
so it's a
to
free
come
for all,
support
basically.
them. It's a complete free for all. There's no. Now you could write articles that urge people to do a certain thing, and that could penetrate the consciousness of people as they make those decisions. But there's nobody who's organized well enough that they're saying, okay, we're all going to march. Our marching orders from Warren are to go support this person next, or our marching orders from Biden are to support X. It's more people are just making individual decisions.
Because I'm going to be honest with you all, I would much rather out of this, if there was a first and second situation where Bernie didn't come in first, I think Pete would be the one that I would prefer, because in the long run, I just don't get that feeling that Pete Buttigieg is going to be the existential threat to Sanders.
But all right, let me ask you this, Ryan. Wouldn't you say that because socialists like meetings, that they are going to have the advantage?
Well, don't consultants like meetings, because then they can bill a bunch of different clients
That's true.
at the same time.
All right. Well, we're gonna have you debate Chris Matthews on that point. Let me ask you a question. What is quality control or accuracy check? We're starting to see this now on MSNBC. Yeah, here we go. And here's a story from CNBC Now. Developing Iowa State Democratic spokesperson tells NBC News that it's putting caucus data through quality control procedures out of an abundance of caution and currently has no timetable for when any results would be released. Now, does that mean that they're going to release it after New Hampshire just to make sure that they know what the results are?
Right. Yeah. So first they bury the poll.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they post results. Then they'll bury the New Hampshire results.
Amy.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is a mess when it comes to quality control. Like that is a fact. Like, but having any kind of confidence that the numbers were precise was difficult. And so what they would do is they would say to the Bernie group, we counted. They thought they had 71. Now, they were sure they had 71. They counted 69 Bernie supporters in this caucus, and then finally they're like, you know what? Fine, we'll take 69. It's fine. And then they said, like, any objection to the number 69 being the number for the Bernie Sanders campaign? And everybody's like, fine, we'll do it. And so nobody objected to it. So boom, the number is 69. And then Biden was 35.
Oh man.
And then they're like, does anybody here object to the number 35? Because they're going around and just counting people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they did this hilarious.
Haven't they?
With Bernie, they did
This is new.
This is so many people. They did a conga line, and they could have kept the conga line just going forever. Like 1,022, 1,023.
You mean they go around in a circle?
Yes, it's insane.
How come they have not come up in all the years that they've done this? Like, everybody gets a ticket. Here's a red coupon ticket that you buy for
now they were giving out
Carnival.
They were giving out tickets this time. This was the first time they've ever done tickets. That didn't seem to help.
Oh my gosh.
People were like walking out with their tickets.
Listen,
it was a mess.
Ryan, you know this. The fight over just getting an accurate count, and when the Bernie people and the Hillary people were reforming everything, it was like we were trying to eliminate the Supreme Court just to get an accurate count of how many people showed up at a caucus. So of course they don't have a system to do it.
I'm interested in the whole getting rid of the Supreme Court.
Close. It's been a mess.
So all right. So now what you're covering this for The Intercept is my understanding that you've been working at for quite some time now. And
I'm taking over Jeremy's podcast.
Oh, is that right? Oh. No.
Oh, really?
Is
Congratulations.
Just for this week.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, but now, so where are you going for the rest of the night? You've gone to 2 caucuses. Where are you going to go to, like headquarters?
Yeah, so it's over now. So we're going to the Bernie Victory Party, which is they all call them victory parties.
Right.
It's aspirational, and it's at the Holiday Inn by the airport.
Of course. And are you getting on a plane first thing in the morning or tonight or something and heading to New Hampshire?
Tomorrow, flying to New Hampshire tomorrow.
And so what at this juncture, like do these candidates and these campaigns have a fixed strategy, or is it dynamic enough that they can that they would respond to these results? In other words, if they say like, hey, we seem to have a real problem in the suburbs and we thought we would we would destroy there.
Right.
Or I mean, do they have that level of flexibility, or is it just like, oh, we better turn this thing to 11 because we're in trouble?
For the Sanders campaign, if they come out like they're expected to, then they'll just, hit the gas and keep going. But everybody else is going to be mixing it up. The Biden camp at the beginning was like, we're going to lose the first 3, and that's our plan. People were like, I don't know if you can actually lose the first. I'm not sure about that. So they're like, okay, we'll win. And now lately they've been saying, well, maybe we won't win. So Biden is going to be facing a huge money crunch.
Yeah.
He probably owes more money to consultants now than he has cash on hand. And nobody's going to want to give to him if he does as poorly as it looks like he's going to do tonight.
Right.
And then Bloomberg is going to try to swoop in and take his spot. Buttigieg is going to try to claim that he's still a viable candidate, and Warren, we'll see what she comes up with, but most of them will probably hang in for New Hampshire because they've hired so much staff there, they've spent so much time.
Wait a second. You didn't even say the name Klobuchar. Dude, don't you know that she's surging?
There were 3 Klobuchar people.
I'm going to make a prediction right now.
The earlier one.
I'm going to make a prediction right now that if we had the ability to assess how many times Klobuchar's name is said over the next 48 hours on MSNBC and on CNN, it will close to rival the rest of the candidates in total.
Her platform was just on. Did you see that? An empty podium was on. No other candidates on MSNBC had an empty podium on.
This is going to be spun as a Klobuchar victory.
How is she doing?
Momentum.
I think she's going to come in 4th. I think there's a possibility that Biden actually look. She's coming from 8th to 4th. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty. Do you know that ants are also the strongest things alive? I mean, relative to their own body weight. Like we're in the realm now of like what my 6-year-old son says that he thinks is clever. Like, I'm going to fake you out. And ants are the strongest things alive. That's what we're going to get with Klobuchar. Like nobody went like doubled their predicted totals from 1 to 2%. Exactly.
We just drove past a car that instead of the pizza delivery magnet on top of the roof, it had a magnet that said Bernie beats Trump.
Oh, that's
nice.
Great.
Oh God. Who drops out tonight? Who drops? Does anybody drop out after tonight?
Deval Patrick.
I don't know. Does Steyer hang in? What about Michael Bennett?
Steyer's definitely hanging in. Steyer's hanging into South Carolina. He's poured too much money into South Carolina.
Right, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
good point.
He was he had some support at this caucus, not anywhere near viable, but there were some people.
Let me ask you,
Michael. You've got Michael Bennett. You've got Deval Patrick. You've got all these people that are still in it that people don't know are still in it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Steyer in South Carolina. It is starting to look like the latest poll out of South Carolina, we don't have that many polls, is showing that Sanders is only 5 points behind Biden. I don't know, because I to be honest with you, I haven't seen that many polls out of South Carolina. But are we looking at Sanders eating into Biden's lead, or are we looking at Steyer eating into Biden's lead? And if that's the case, do you think is he this year's Fred Thompson?
I think a little of both. I'd be curious for Ben's sake. I think he's eating into a little bit of both, but more Biden than Bernie, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just from some context I have in South Carolina, the ground game for Steyer, particularly in the black community. See, that I think it is Steyer chipping away at Biden because of how much he's pouring into the black community of South Carolina. Like, he's poured millions upon millions of dollars just in that target alone. And because
hiring a lot of canvassers.
Oh, yeah. Canvassers. He's hiring people from Rainbow Push Coalition, the NAACP. I mean, he's hiring the people who have the relationships. And so that matters beyond anything else. The canvassers, obviously, people do want to be touched and have their door knocked on. But those pre-existing relationships, Tom Steyer had the money to go ahead and buy them in the black community.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Ryan.
Although Bloomberg might try to, I guess he doesn't care about South Carolina. It'd be funny if he tried to outbid. He did that to some Biden people here. Bloomberg just doubled the salary of some Biden people.
We heard that. Actually, I had a caller the other day who said that she had a friend who was a director down in Southeast Iowa, and they were working for Biden, and then they took a job with Bloomberg in Michigan for $6,000 a month or something, which was, like three times or twice as what. But let me ask you this, and let me explain for people who don't know. Fred Thompson in 2008 stayed in the race because his buddy, John McCain, was worried about what was happening in South Carolina. I can't remember who he was going against, but I think Pat Roberts maybe might have been in it. There was a lot of challenging and Fred Thompson stayed in the race. He was an actor and a former senator, and I think he became senator again. He was on, I think it was Law and Order or SVB or some one of those things.
Yeah.
And he stayed in the race essentially to sop up some of those opponents, those more southerny types, Huckabee maybe, to soak up some of their support so that McCain would be closer to the middle of the pack in South Carolina. And I wonder at one point, Tom Steyer has been very cloying lately, and I think he must have a sense he's not going to win this. He wants to win California. If I'm Tom Steyer, I go to somebody like that I think is going to win California and say, hey, I'm thinking of running for the Senate. What are the chances you give me an endorsement?
Right.
You scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Somebody like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan, you're in D.C. Aren't you supposed to know the inside skinny on this? What are the people saying at all those fancy parties you go to?
I mean, Bernie Sanders is, can you imagine Steyer sitting down and pitching at the, it's so non-Bernie Sanders,
Exactly.
But at the same time, Steyer would see the logic of it. There's nobody better on climate change after Steyer than Bernie. And Bernie never ran a coal company or whatever Steyer did. It makes sense.
It'd be interesting. All
Ryan,
right. Go ahead.
I want to ask Ryan a quick question. Just at a 30,000-foot level, what would you say the difference between Steyer as a billionaire? He's clearly not even being in consideration for the salvation of the Democratic establishment as compared to Michael Bloomberg. What would you say the big difference is in why the establishment is looking towards Bloomberg versus Tom Steyer?
I think it's actually the amount of budget. I think if Steyer would have come out and said, I'm going to spend every penny that it takes, and started hiring every single high-level Democratic operative at 3 times what they're used to making, those high-level Democratic operatives would be telling their friends that Tom Steyer's for real. Steyer has spent a lot of money, but he concentrated it all in the early states, which, all of except for New Hampshire, they all have pretty. I don't know about Nevada, but they're pretty cheap states. It's not expensive to run ads in South Carolina and Iowa, and so I just think it's money. Bloomberg's talking about $2 billion, and Steyer's talking about tens of millions. And certainly Bloomberg's closer to their politics, but it's not about the politics. I think it's about the dollar bills at the end.
And Bloomberg had that ecosystem in place. I mean, he is a product of New York politics. He had, a group of Howard Wolfson, right? Isn't that his name?
Yeah.
A Clintonian guy. I mean, they travel in tribes. So if he starts with this base of loyalists that can kind of build out like the DLC types that he had on his staff, I mean, expand that outward. And he had a real strategy. I don't know if Steyer ever really had a strategy operation to win. Yeah. I mean, I knew a couple of people who were on board with him advising him a year and a half ago, but I'm pretty sure that they're off the Steyer trade. They were taking checks in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I just looked it up. I mean, I guess the answer is in the numbers. Steyer is only worth 1.6 compared to Bloomberg's 54. Yeah. So yeah, that makes it clear. Yeah.
He's a peasant.
So Ryan, let me ask you this. If Biden becomes non-viable after this, right? I mean, if everybody's just sort of like, forget it. And I feel like, that Biden, I used the example of those old Three Stooges thing where they beat up the guy and then he's still standing and they just go over and blow on him and he falls over. I sort of feel like, that's where we're at with Biden, and that, everyone was just waiting for a data point that would show this. And I imagine if there's a South Carolina poll in the next week and Biden comes in 4th or 5th, the Klobuchar.
Or even tied.
Yeah, I mean, yes, tied for 4th or anywhere but, 2 or 3. I think in any meaningful way, I think he's in big trouble. Where do you think that sort of like where that support goes? Not from the voters as much as like sort of like who are those people who have been still sort of like Biden, we need Biden. Like where do they go?
Well, that's when you start to have the chaotic, assault that they tried against Trump. Just throwing everything they've got against the wall. They won't be unified, I don't think. Some of them will go behind Klobuchar.
I think that's true.
Might even go to Warren. Some of them might go to Pete. Some of them will say, well, let's just see if Bloomberg can do this. Some would say, you know what? Let Bernie try. Like, there's no – if there was a backup plan that was as strong or stronger than Biden, it would be running right now.
Right.
That's right.
Somebody will probably call Michelle Obama.
I was going to say,
no again.
Man.
I think you're all missing the obvious. Oprah,
of course. Yeah. Hell, that's my second choice.
John Kerry. I mean,
John Kerry.
He's already given
the Bank of America board.
Yeah, and stop taking.
He's already given them a heads up. They're right now scrambling to see if they can find somebody to sit on that board.
Howard Dean, perfect compromise candidate.
Or Howard Dean could just jump on that board, and I think the only thing that he would have to do is see if he could actually windsurf and pick up the slack for Kerry on Nantucket.
Not much older than Bernie.
There you go. John Kerry's younger than all of them.
That doesn't solve their problem.
Is he really?
Apparently. Yeah. Jeez. Anything? Are we missing anything, Ryan?
It's their fault for not getting behind somebody like Cory Booker.
That's fair. That's a good point.
Julian Castro more than Cory Booker. Cory Booker just had a problem with he was just too corny. I just have to say it like that. He was corny, and Julian Castro had a little bit more je ne sais quoi. We could call it that.
Yeah, but Cory was part of that system. He worked his way
But it's interesting. It seems like a couple of them got tripped up because of where they started. Like Booker started on the progressive side. I think he felt he tried.
You mean like in the presidential race or in his career?
In the presidential race.
Okay, yeah.
And I think Harris did too. And then they sort of realized, like, wait a second, this lane does not seem to have any room for us.
Right.
And then they got lost. Yeah. They got basically stuck.
Well, same thing with Castro. I mean, these are all people who are products of the establishment,
Without a
funded
doubt.
by the establishment, fueled by the establishment, run by the establishment. And suddenly you're going to go, how far left do you go? Where that the lines are not clear. I mean, we don't even know between Bernie and Warren. It's not even clear where those lines are.
We're not getting any, we should tell you folks that we're not getting really any information out from Iowa because they're doing accuracy checks.
I have some news.
Yeah, the Caucus app seems to be. You're
on it.
up.
We're on the same page here.
What's going on?
The app, the Iowa Caucus voting app, which was already problematic, stirs security concerns. Wall Street Journal reports that the app that caucus leaders are using to report Iowa results isn't working. Nobody knows who owns the app. And there were major concerns. Yeah.
Banana Republic.
This is the now they're gonna.
That's right.
They're gonna eliminate caucuses because of this. Guys, this was all the writing on the wall. These are all their talking points as to why caucuses.
Right. Meanwhile, we'll get the same problem with the voting machines, though,
course.
with this.
Right.
Paper ballots. Can Bernie just do a week where he doesn't campaign on anything but just paper
Love it.
ballots?
He's like old school. Turn your phones off. Check them at the door.
Shouldn't be that hard.
Wow. All right. Well, Ryan, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I have a feeling we're
Ryan,
not.
when does your episode come out on the podcast? When does that come out?
We're aiming for the morning.
Ah!
It's gonna be a long night.
Dude, tell me about it. Now, what do you do? Where are your tech people? Are they napping right now?
No, we go on our way to the Bernie thing. Do a few interviews and then finish the sucker up.
All right. Well, good luck with it.
Although it'd be nice to have a result.
That might make it more palatable. But believe me, we get the same problem on this end. I don't know what we're going to do for tomorrow because we got to come back and do the State of the Union, and I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do for the podcast, but I guess we're going to find out. All right, Ryan, appreciate the call.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks, man. All right, let's see if we can find some more people on the phone who are calling from Iowa so we can finally get some real results. So far, I think we have probably more results than any other show. Yeah. We do. I mean, we have results from 4 different, and now with Ryan, 5.
I got one from Precinct 36. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, who's
Precinct
this?
36
Is someone you know
Des
in there?
Moines.
Is
No,
that
it's
it?
just Twitter, but it's a photo.
Okay.
Just come on. I'll cite it.
It works. Twitter. It works.
I scan Twitter and I choose the right kinds of people. So, Des Moines Precinct 36, Sanders at 76, Biden 37, Warren at 23, Pete at 8, which is 0. First round was 8, second round was 0. So, not bad for Bernie.
If you guys can help me scan the calls to see how we're doing here we go. I got one right here. Number 8. Calling from a 515 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Zach.
Zach, and where in Iowa are you calling from, Zach?
Actually, I am not too far from those other 2 guys in Des Moines. I'm in
What's going on?
Beaverdale.
Why are we so heavily concentrated with Des Moines people?
I have a feeling it's because this area is very blue.
Okay.
It's the rest of the state that is pretty red.
All right, Beaverdale.
But
Right? Okay.
I'm in precinct 15, and it's poor reporting on my part. I wasn't expecting to call in. I left after the first round, but Warren had the most, Buttigieg, Sanders, and I think they did say there was a 4th viable. I didn't hear, but definitely Biden was out. Klobuchar was close, so she might have gotten some people in the second round, but like I said, I didn't hang around. So.
Wow, this is interesting. I mean, because and now give me a sense of Beaverdale. Is that a wealthier area? Not particularly wealthy.
It's middle class. I think it's a bit of mix of both. You do have areas where it is obviously wealthy and others a little less, but I would say it's all middle class.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting. And that is supposed to be a Joe Biden, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's Joe Biden.
Yeah, and in fact, that you guys had a clip of Biden holding the lapel of that guy
Yes.
who told him to vote for someone else. Actually, I know him. And, yeah.
Small world.
I'm going to guess that he actually did vote for somebody else.
Yeah. He used to be a Iowa State representative, actually.
Oh, wow.
That's probably not the guy you want to grab by the lapel. Appreciate
Yeah, exactly.
appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Calling from a 319 area code. You are calling from, let's see if I'm not mistaken, the southeast part of the state, maybe in the center. Is that right? 319?
Southeast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. All right.
How are you figuring this out? Someone's feeding this to you.
A little bit of work. I mean, southeast. You were talking about. Let's see. Just give me 1 second here, because I'm just trying to refresh my memory. You're in the Quad City area, aren't you?
Yes.
All right. Okay. And what's it looking like down there? Hello? 319?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody else.
Nope. That's it. What do you got?
So ours was kind of crazy. We had 4 delegates went to Bernie, 4 went to Pete.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Say that again.
yeah.
4 went to Bernie, 4 went to Pete.
So, and then Amy Klobuchar was at first non-viable, but after there was quite a bit of weird events that went down. We had a guy from Hawaii that was there to represent Yang, and he had this big helmet, and he delivered a pretty fiery speech. But then during the first count, he yelled at his 2 delegates, his 2 supporters, hey, come over to the Biden group. They've got an offer for you. And somehow they worked it out. They made Biden viable and got him 3 delegates along with Klobuchar. And so that was kind of distressing. But it was not a total loss for Bernie, but
what was the offer?
Wait, so how many did Klobuchar end up with?
3.
So 4 for Bernie, 4 for Pete, and 3 for Klobuchar. Now, I got to tell you that my understanding is that that area is a pretty blue-collar area. Is that right?
It is, yes. A lot of factories, a lot of big employers like Deere, farm equipment, you name it. There's huge center of factory work.
And that is supposedly Biden territory, right? That's like the Erie and La Crosse, Wisconsin. It's not Scranton.
Better. The lady that was there to give the speech for Biden, she might have actually been older than Biden, definitely a little more senile. She came down from New York just to come and speak at our tiny little, we had 81 people show up. I just couldn't believe it. She was almost incomprehensible, but I guess that's how it worked. I didn't realize that people could come in, paid staffers could come in and deliver our speeches, but it was something else.
Wow.
The speech is just not caucusing.
Well, appreciate the phone call and the update. Thank you. Thanks
for all you do.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it. This is pretty good. We're getting we have
our own results, so we can check how good the quality control goes.
Yeah, Kornacki's watching us on his big board now.
Right. Let's go. What else? What? Give me another number here. We got startup 7. Let's see.
Oh man.
We got. Shoot! Wait a second. Here we go. This is a call from a 563 area code. If I'm not mistaken, that is the northeastern part of the state. Who's this?
Hey, Sam, this is Alex.
Alex, and you're up in that Jackson, Jones, Winneshiek, Fayette, and Clinton County area, aren't you?
Dubuque County.
Oh.
Or Dubuque.
Oops.
Dubuque, yep. So we caucused at District 20. Sanders had 3 delegates. Warren had 2, Biden 2, Klobuchar 2, and Buttigieg 2.
All right, so Sanders, Sanders, how many? 3, did you say?
3, correct.
And then Warren, Biden.
Warren 2.
Yeah.
Biden 2. Yep. Klobuchar had 2, and Buttigieg had 2. There were a few Yang supporters. I thought it was interesting. All the Yang supporters went to either Warren or Buttigieg. We didn't get any come to Sanders. And then there were 3 for Steyer, and they all went to Biden.
Oh, interesting.
And it was pretty close. So there was 11 total delegates allowed for our district, and at the end the math equaled 12. So they had to take 1 away from Biden, and they were pretty angry about it. Me and my wife stayed and watched. They were all sitting around a little card table, counting them out, and there was almost like a shouting match going on between Biden and a few of the other representatives. Kind of a mess.
Why did they take it away? I don't understand that part.
So basically, Biden had gotten like 2.5 according to the math. So since if they have a 0.5, it's the one who's over 0.5 who's closest to 0.5. They get theirs taken away.
Okay.
So they had given them a boost to 3, but since they had given them the largest boost, they took their delegate back down to only 2. So they had 64 total, and Sanders had 68 total. Yeah, it's kind of weird. So, and Klobuchar actually had a pretty big showing, but there's a Catholic sister, like a nun place just down the road, and there were about 35 sisters who showed up.
Convent?
All for Klobuchar. So
Whoa.
it was pretty much her whole show. Yeah.
Convents for Klobuchar. Who knew?
Yep.
Wow.
Basically.
Doesn't figure.
All right. Well, appreciate the call. Thanks, man.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's keep going here. We got a lot of people, I think, calling in from Iowa who have been at these, go to 9, calling from a 712 area code. That is in western Iowa. We haven't heard much from that area. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 712?
Hello?
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 Hello? Hello? Calling from a 712. You're on the air.
Okay. So I'm not in Western Iowa.
All right. Where are you?
So I'm in Des Moines now, actually downtown Des Moines.
Okay.
I was precinct 55. And the delegates went 5 for Bernie, 5 for Pete, and 4 for Warren. Then I have friends that are also downtown, but they were in a different precinct.
Yeah, what precinct?
And they have the same results.
What precinct?
I don't know what number, but they're downtown.
Okay. Wow. Well, I mean, I think the thing that is really coming out. I appreciate the phone call. Thanks for holding and letting us know. Anything? What was the first round voting looking like?
The first round, so I could tell right off the bat that Yang, Biden, and Klobuchar, they had a sizable group, but they weren't viable. And Buttigieg was barely viable by 1. That's what I heard. But after the second realignment, or the first realignment, whatever, he got a lot of people going to him. So
interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising. I was honestly pretty shocked. He ended up with like 240 some votes or candidate or people. Yeah, and then Bernie had like 220. Warren had 180. So yeah, and then my friends that were in the other precinct downtown, they had like 220 Bernie, 180 Pete, and then they had like 150 Warren or something like that. If I recall correctly, that's what they told me.
All right. Well, appreciate the info. Thanks for the call. You know, I will say this, guys. The thing that really seems to be coming across now is that I think we're going to see Bernie, obviously, I mean, it appears, but who knows, is going to win. I don't think he's going to win by an overwhelming margin. I think it's going to be bunched up. But the thing that is, I think, like, if what we're hearing is any indication, and of course it's a very small sample size, right? But there's a couple of places where supposedly Biden was supposed to do well.
Yeah.
And when we've heard from those places, he has not.
Right.
And according to, what Ryan Grimm tells us, if Biden didn't do well in either one of those places, in the, one of the most black districts in Iowa, and also in the sort of like La Crosse, Wisconsin like districts, he's not going to do well.
Yeah.
And we certainly hasn't done well in the moneyed areas that have called us. Biden
He's not doing well anywhere.
He's not doing well anywhere.
Right.
And so I think, like, the story coming out of this is going to be Biden is toast. And I don't think it's.
I think we have to make sure that's the story.
That's right,
Sam, because they're going to try their best to spin this. If Bernie doesn't win by as much as we think he should, or as much as the media is going to set the high bar for.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to do our part to make sure that everyone focuses on the fact that the front runner for the Democratic establishment was not viable from the beginning, but certainly after the results of Iowa.
Yep, I think that's absolutely right, and I think the bottom line is. The second choices, right? They're second choices, and maybe people will retreat to those in places like New Hampshire, but Biden hasn't been that much of a factor in New Hampshire anyways. So there's not necessarily going to be a lot of movement except for two. Presumably, it's what the dynamic that's in New Hampshire is going to stay the dynamic in New Hampshire, except for Biden will probably drop a little bit.
Right.
And to the extent that he has any support there, maybe it'll go to those second choicers again. But when they get down to South Carolina now, right, and Nevada, that's when all of a sudden you're going to start to see some separation. Because I got news for you. Pete Buttigieg is not the second choice in South Carolina.
Or Nevada.
Or Nevada.
Or Texas, even.
Or
As you start to get to
South
Super
Carolina.
Tuesday, Buttigieg does not have a Super Tuesday pathway. And that's where the numbers are going to come in very clear. And that's where you're going to look at Warren, who has invested in states like Texas. We were laughing about it last week, but, she has been doing better in the last week. And she might very well it's very, very early right now, but she might come in at second. I still think she's going to be second. And I think Pete is going to be very close behind her at this point, looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
And at this point, looking at the numbers, I don't think Bernie is going to be where he needs to be the clear front runner to take this and run with it.
After tonight.
After tonight. I think
that's true. But I think that getting Biden out of the picture opens up a lot of running ground because
without a doubt.
Look at all the national polls. Look at the early state polls head to head.
Yeah.
It has been consistently the one consistent thing. It's been Biden and Bernie who can beat Trump consistently in those polls. Now, you can choose to believe those polls or not believe those polls, and you can look into the battleground states, and it's a similar dynamic. But if you were looking for a data point,
But we'll even if Biden's in the race, and maybe Ben, you can, because you have a better sense of the later states probably. When you see where Biden's going to draw, he's not going to get out of the race. So where will the support that he loses, because he's not going to lose all of it, but of the support that he loses, where is that going to go? I don't know if it's going to go to Bernie.
Well, I think a good portion of it's going to go to Bernie because you'll be surprised, right? There's the vast majority of the voters who support Joe Biden. They don't support him because they believe in any of his policies or anything that he stands for. They believe in him because they think that he can win. But once that narrative is dispensed with, which tonight really kind of dispels that notion, the next viable person is clearly, to most people, think about it. Who else? Right? It's Bernie Sanders with the possibility of Elizabeth Warren. I think after tonight, Elizabeth Warren is really going to emerge as the actual threat against Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren, and then with the possibility of Bloomberg, I think he's going to come in pretty strong with his money. But in terms of the race in general, I don't think Amy Klobuchar is really going to. She's going to get a narrative out of tonight, but that's it. She's not going to really get voters out of tonight. Bernie is going to get voters out of tonight, most certainly. Biden is going to lose voters out of tonight. And I think it's really the tale is going to be told on the 29th when we hit South Carolina.
All right, let's go. We still have some Iowa, or a lot of Iowa callers on the line. Which one am I going to first? 17. 17. Calling from a 412 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Sean from Iowa.
Sean from Iowa. Where you are calling from the where are you calling from?
It's a work phone. It's a work phone. It'll lead you to Pennsylvania, but I live in Iowa for sure.
Okay. And
so I'm in eastern Iowa.
All right. And where'd you caucus?
Yeah, I'm in eastern Iowa. I was caucusing tonight outside Cedar Rapids a little bit, kind of working class area, a little bit more affluent. And first alignment, Bernie didn't make it. I was a precinct captain for Bernie.
Wow.
Okay.
So that was a bummer. Wasn't viable. So the campaign asked us to stick around to make sure that if there are any rules changes or anything like that, that we at least had a voice. So most of us did. Some of us realigned with Elizabeth Warren, and I was kind of marshaling people. And when they did, the Amy Klobuchar, Biden, Pete Buttigieg group kind of realigned. It looked like it was going to be Klobuchar and Buttigieg. And then we went over to Warren, so it ended up being Warren and Pete, which was unfortunate. But the good news is that no one knew the rules and everybody left. And then I was the only one who was able to explain what happens next, including the person coordinating the event or the caucus. And now I am a delegate. So while Bernie didn't have viability, the people there, because I knew what I was doing, voted me to be the delegate, even though Bernie didn't win. And now I can go and vote for whomever I want because the people there sent me to go.
Excellent, man.
So
wow.
Wow.
I don't know.
Amazing.
I don't know if CNN can capture
Democracy
that one.
is
but,
beautiful. It really is beautiful to see democracy in action. So what's the delegate count? We have one rogue delegate.
Technically one for.
All right, so get one.
Pete, and then
wait, I'm sorry. Say again.
Technically one for Pete, and technically one for Warren. But we're not quite sure whether I took the Pete slot or the Warren slot.
Oh my God.
But I took a slot.
That's amazing.
So just in case the UN wanted to monitor something, you could probably come out to Eastern Iowa in
I
4 years.
changed my mind about caucuses, guys.
But
holy jeez.
So come the county convention, I get to go and sit in one of those seats, and I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to kind of go and show up, and when they seat me, we'll see.
Sam, you have a scoop and a half on your show tonight.
Yes,
That's
you
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe what the podcast is tomorrow is the last is this last hour that we've been doing, and we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll try and tag something on it. Put an extra one in the feed. That's an amazing story, and one that I find both exhilarating and deeply disturbing. But that is
for sure.
Wow. All right. Well, it goes to show you folks, particularly in caucuses, Pays to do your homework, I guess, in a way that probably is.
How do we believe you? The audience thinks there's quite a few people in the audience who think you're trolling us. How do we believe what you're saying here, guy?
I just tweeted all 4 of you saying I had a good story. You want me to tweet my precinct badge?
No, you don't have to do all that.
Well, yeah, tweet your precinct badge ID.
Yes, please do.
Okay. I'll tweet it to you all right now. Give me a couple minutes to go find it. Oh, it's right here. I'll tweet it to you. You want me to do it live on the air so we get some good airtime?
Yeah, let's do this.
Make some good TV. Just do it.
All right. This is going to be pretty.
What's your Twitter handle?
Crazy.
Hold on one second.
You're not gonna want me to spell it.
Wow.
At majority for it at BF1NN at Nomiki.
Nomiki.
No, he had it right.
Oh,
You
shoot.
don't.
You may have to sit in for me, bud.
But how else would you pronounce it, though? I'm confused. How else would you pronounce Nomiki?
Nomiki. It's Nomi.
Wow.
It's just really simple, guys. Can you say Nomi? Key.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else already has it.
Nomiki?
No,
Do you speak other languages?
It's just an emphasis on the
Nignoi. What?
Hold on.
Just while we're pausing,
hold on.
I'm speaking to somebody who, very important authority on background, but not going to disclose who it is. At this point in 2016, they had 75% of the data in.
Wow.
And they are not even close to that now.
Wow.
It's not even near. Yeah.
Hey, folks, I got some bad news for you. We're not going to have results tonight.
But you've got to leave, right?
Well, we got to
just
leave.
tweeted it to you.
All right, thanks. I mean, I have a feeling they're not going to let me on to talk about the results. I mean, that would be pretty awesome, but I doubt that that's likely to happen. Will you?
Got his badge. I see it. All right. You've been verified.
Wow, there it is.
You see
folks.
it?
Yep.
All right, we will. Let's.
Oh, Derek, I follow you already. Okay, cool.
No, I'm not Derek. I'm
Sean.
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 Oh, one person. Okay, hang on. We keep searching.
No.
I like your Bernie beats Trump.
Here it is. We got it right here.
And there it is.
Precinct captain.
Big fan, Sam. Thanks for being a little North Star last few years. Everyone, appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
And
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Good work.
Hey, and as an Iowan, can I just say that Illinois has more closely matches the demographic makeup of the Democratic Party, and probably could run a better election than we are right now.
Wow.
So,
like Cook
if everybody
County?
wanted to support that.
Oh, you're saying?
Oh no. Well,
you're
don't leave them.
You're suggesting maybe the first primary should be in Illinois.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a better makeup of the demographic makeup of the Democratic Party and of the country. Because of the 92 people voting there tonight, caucusing tonight, I think there were 5 people of color.
Wow. Well, Sean, you're an American hero as far as I'm concerned, and I appreciate the call.
I appreciate that coming from
Thanks,
you.
man. Thanks. Wow.
Yeah, have a good night. Bye.
That's quite a story.
What was his Twitter handle? Because my mentions are a mess. Sean at what?
It's CSAERAENY.
That's something. That's quite a story that I did not anticipate hearing tonight.
Breaking news for you, man.
Yeah, there you go. Let's see. I'm going to go just down to take the next person from Iowa. We got a couple of 319s on the line. Call from a 319 area code. Folks, if you're not from Iowa, we're probably not going to get to you tonight. I mean, with all due respect, we've got a bunch of people on the phone from Iowa, and Iowa's where it's at. You're calling from a 319 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello? You're on the air.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, okay. This is Casey. I'm calling out of Springville, Iowa. It's kind of a suburb of Cedar Rapids.
Okay. Another one from outside of Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
What's happening, Casey?
Interesting. We got 3 delegates. First was Klobuchar, and second was Buttigieg, and then 1 for Sanders.
Oh my God! What?
Yes.
What?
1 for Sanders. Now, tell me about what demographically about Springville.
White, very white, well-to-do, evangelical.
Yeah.
Biden wasn't viable. Warren wasn't viable. So the Warren people went over, and they all went over to Klobuchar. They didn't even have a place for her, and just all these people showed
There
up.
seems to be a lot of that, right? Warren and Klobuchar working
Yeah.
together. That seems to be a big.
Whether intentionally or not.
Right. I mean, who knows whether that was sort of like a strategic thing or it's just sort of that's where people's tastes run when they go to their number 2.
If you guys had to guess, Clinton official that helped develop this app or was integral to it, which official would you guess? That was part of
Philippe Reines.
Nope.
I'm just kidding. I know he doesn't.
Robbie Mook.
Robbie Mook.
Oh my God.
Robbie Mook.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Well, that was what happened when Bill
Appreciate
Clinton
the call.
said,
Thank
"Get
you
out
so
of the
much for
room."
calling and hanging on the line to let us know what's happening in Springville. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
So Sam, I'm on the Des Moines Register, and they have Bernie Sanders at 27.8% and Pete now at 23.9% after the realignment. Still only 34 out of 1,765 precincts reporting, but this is the first time I've seen Bernie Sanders being in the lead.
Now, I'll tell you here, something is interesting. We talk about how much the Democratic establishment does not want Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
This new rule to release the numbers and to count the numbers of the first vote before the realignment, I have very little doubt now is going to be very favorable to Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
I also have an equal amount of doubt that there's going to be a very concerted effort to say, well, that number's not relevant. I mean, I will bet you anything that I own that the first thing, that half the shows on MSNBC, they're not even going to mention that number.
Of course not. And,
right?
and most people don't even realize it. They don't understand the significance of that in relation to 2016.
Right. But in 2016, you didn't have that number that much, right?
We didn't have the number. This happened during the Unity Reform Commission. You had and to be fair, on the commission, even though we were outnumbered, the Iowa people who were appointed by Hillary and Perez were actually on our side of the reforms. They were very easy to work with, the people who were pro-caucus. But the big issue is because people were being pushed away at the doors. You had people stuffed in a room in 2016. They had no sense of how many people were in the room, who was being counted for. It's chaos now. It was a different type of chaos then. And so you didn't have those numbers now. And of course you have it. That might be all the data we have to work from at this point. Is
those first numbers as they walk through the door, the first vote might be the only one that we have, because why would we have that and not the second? Because the calculations are trickier at that point, or
I don't know. I mean, the precinct captain
you still
should be
a big
trained.
caucus?
Can we call? No, I'm not. Can we call back the precinct captain guy and ask him if he was trained in the second and how to tally?
Well, let's see if we got another caucus captain online. We have over 50 people. Here we go. Here we go. All right, here we go.
These websites.
Calling from a 515 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Hannah Laura from Southeast Iowa.
Hannah Laura, how are you? Good to hear from you again.
Great. Yeah. So there were 451 people at my precinct.
Wait, will you tell us again where your precinct is?
I'm sorry, say again.
What is your precinct again?
We're precinct 2 in Jefferson County.
Okay.
It's actually the town where Marianne had her headquarters.
Oh, okay.
And I was knocking doors over the weekend. Knocked 71 doors, but one of them had the Marianne tour bus in the driveway.
Oh.
No one was home. But okay, so at I can report our precinct, and I know one other in town what they got too. So in the first round, the only people that were viable were Bernie and Warren, and all the other ones weren't even close. There were 0 people in the room for Tulsi. There were 6 people for Bloomberg, which is kind of high for around here. But after the the crazy thing that happened. So the Yang people, let's see. Okay, so the Yang, Tom, Klobuchar, and Pete people pretty much all went together in one group, and they pulled a name out of a hat.
Oh my God.
How many people? You tell me again. How many people were at this caucus?
451.
451. Okay.
451. Yeah. Do you want to hear the original numbers on the first round?
Yeah. What was the first round?
Okay, so we needed 68 for viability. Klobuchar got 32. Tom Steyer got 22. Pete got 28. Bloomberg had 6. Yang had 37. Biden had 41. Warren had 86, plus he had 0. Bernie had, I think, 190 on the first round.
Okay.
Yeah, so we blew everybody out of the water, but so it ended up with the final count: Bernie at 218, Warren at 112, Klobuchar at 58. So the delegates were 6 for Bernie, 3 for Warren, and 2 for Klobuchar, thanks to
and to be clear, the Klobuchar vote was literally a lottery.
They pulled a name out of a hat.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I don't know what the Biden group ended up doing. I'm sorry?
I said, but the New York Times thought she was the choice. This person who has a path to victory and a real strategy.
Well, maybe they pulled a name out of a hat.
She didn't even have... Yeah, she didn't even have the most of those 4. Yang had the most at 37 on the first round. Yeah. Klobuchar had 32. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Then Pete was in 3rd place there, but yeah, they took over. Go ahead.
Being on the ground, is there field? Klobuchar field? She has jumped to a 14% pre-poll, as of a week ago. Is there an operation on the ground, or is this just completely like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's had a ground game here for not very long, and it's not very big.
Okay.
I would say, Warren's, I was still getting texts and phone calls today from Warren people. So they've had a really strong game the whole time. Yeah.
Well, that's Hannah-Laura. That's amazing, and appreciate you, calling in and letting us know what's happening. That's.
Wow.
Picked a name out of a hat. We're hearing every story there is. This is like...
Yep.
It's a wild...
I don't know if anybody saw that documentary, Frederick Wiseman's Meat, but you don't want to watch that if you eat meat, and if you want to stop eating meat, I would suggest watch that documentary. That's sort of I feel like the process we're going through. We're looking at sort of stuff that we don't want to necessarily know is going on.
Right.
Hannah-Laura, thank you so much.
Can I say what?
Yeah, please.
Can I say one more thing? So I haven't been listening all day, but it seemed like from the talk this morning, there was one clarification in the rule change that I wanted to make. I wasn't sure.
You got to be quick because we got Amy.
Okay.
Will you hold on for 1 second?
So,
do you want to hear Amy Klobuchar speak? We're going to listen to her because she is on a surge.
Okay.
We are now ready to head to New Hampshire. And my friends here in Iowa, we have beaten the odds every step of the way. We have done it on the merits. We have done it with ideas. And
We've done it with the hats.
With hard work. Because, thank you. We know in our hearts that in a democracy, it is not about the loudest voice or the biggest bank account. It is about the best idea, and it is about the person that can turn those ideas into action.
We're number 4. We're number 4.
Win big by trying to outdivide the divider in chief. We
Boom.
know that we win by bringing people with us instead of shutting them out. Donald Trump's worst nightmare is that the people
Amy
in
with
the
a
middle,
stapler.
the people who have had enough of the name calling and the mudslinging, have a candidate to vote for in November. Donald Trump's worst nightmare is that our fired up Democrats will march to victory alongside a big coalition of independents and moderate Republicans.
Okay.
that
I mean,
see this election-
if you want to hear more of Klobuchar, you can watch the screen. We'll keep that up in a corner, all right, so you can see the thing. I think she's definitely going to be able to parlay this into maybe a fourth-place finish in New Hampshire, maybe fifth-place finish in New Hampshire, and that's going to be pretty impressive.
Will there be 5 people left?
Parallel for Amy Klobuchar.
Hannah Laura, just say one more thing about the rules.
Okay, so one of the big changes that when I was door knocking, I found a lot of people didn't understand. So, there's the 2 rounds of voting, by a head count, although this year they actually had paper for the first time. But you used to be able to, after your first, vote, anybody could switch to anywhere. But this time the rules changed so that if you are viable, you're locked in there. So, I mean, it kind of we're letting people know that, if you really want Bernie, don't go to Yang first, because if he's viable, you won't be able to
Right,
move.
right. Interesting.
So,
all right.
My mistake.
Okay.
Interesting.
Thanks
Thanks for
for
the
what
call.
you guys do.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Why was that your mistake? Did you push for that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had the old. I was talking about the old rules. I wasn't on the caucus committee.
Calling from a 319 area code. 319.
Hey, is it me?
Yep.
Oh, hi. This is Kara from Cedar Falls, Iowa.
Hi,
And,
Kara. Cedar Falls. Where did you caucus?
It's Ward 5, Precinct 2.
Okay.
Cedar Falls. We have 15 precincts.
And tell me a little bit about that precinct. Is it wealthy? Is it
Well,
not
my
wealthy?
area-
Is it blue collar? Is it...
Our city, it's a little bit of everything in our city. My area is, I'd say, pretty middle class. Not much lower than that, but not a lot higher either. Just kind of,
Okay.
fairly well-to-do. You can't live here if you don't have a little money, because our housing is a little high. But
Fair enough.
it's a university town, so there's different areas. I know the areas down by the university we're going really heavy Bernie. Mine's a little bit older area, like people that have lived here. So
Okay. And so how many people were there?
187.
Okay. And what were the
were at our
results?
place. Well, we had 13 delegates to give away, and the end results were Bernie got 4, and then Buttigieg, Biden, and Warren all got 3.
Biden. Okay.
Um,
Are you sure Klobuchar wasn't in there? Because she seems like she was pretty psyched about it.
I am positive, because the first vote, she had 19. You had to have 29 to be viable. And there were, I think, 15 Yang people there. A lot of them went over to her. They were trying to get up to 29. They got to 27 and couldn't go any higher. And they were just crestfallen. It was horrible. And so I'd say they kind of spread out. Some went to Pete. Some went to Warren. We got a handful with Bernie. We had started out with 43 votes after the first count, and I think we ended with 57.
Wow.
So
interesting. Well, appreciate the call. Thanks for hanging in there with us.
yeah, thanks. Love the show. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye. I will say this about Klobuchar. Now, I'm not listening to the speech, and I'm not going to pretend like I think I'm missing much here. And if you do, then, by all means, please. But this is very smart.
First one.
Very smart, because there's not going to be any more people watching after this.
That's right.
Right? Like, you're only going to get diminishing returns if you give a speech. There are a lot of people going to go to bed tonight who are going to listen to Amy Klobuchar. There's not going to be a single result that is announced, except for what you've heard on this program. And they're going to go to bed think Klobuchar had a great night.
Yep.
I mean, this is very smart.
Right.
And, this is a Joe Biden failure.
Absolutely.
That Klobuchar is here. I mean, you got to hand it to her. This is smart politics. And, to come out and make like she actually had a victory here because.
So what's stopping this is, I mean, I have my own opinion about this, but what is stopping Bernie from coming out right now and saying, all right, I want it. We don't know by how much, but I want it. So let's move on.
I mean, I think he has a responsibility of actually being it could come down to him being in first or second place.
That's right.
And so I think when you can come in fifth or fourth or fifth, I think you have less of a responsibility to see the results, to actually speak out. So Amy Klobuchar is just going on the sheer virtue of she survived. Bernie has to really see, is he going to come in first or second before he really speaks out in victory.
Because they're going to, no matter what they do, they're going to criticize him for prematurely,
Exactly.
even though Hillary called it
and she's going to get it
early.
And she's going to get a participation award, right? That's what she essentially took home tonight.
I mean, I think look, this is good politics. It's going to help with the spin. But I think, again, Sanders, at the end of the day, walking away from this, Joe Biden is not viable. Period. End of the story. I mean, I'm not convinced, frankly, if I'm Sanders, that I get a problem with Amy Klobuchar being elevated because she is going to be cutting into, as we've seen tonight, Warren. She's going to be cutting into Buttigieg. She may sop up some of the Biden, but it doesn't really matter because the question then becomes, relative to the rest of the field, who is considered most electable? And, here's the thing. Sanders' support will not shrink. It only goes in two ways: either stand still or get bigger. It is just not going to get smaller. They are, and so if I'm Sanders right now, if I'm the campaign, all I want is I'm happy to have a couple of more medium size to small fish enter into the pool as long as the big one we just lost.
Although Warren might be at a point, if she does well enough tonight and in New Hampshire, she could have the same issue. And then you're at a stalemate.
Warren could have the same issue.
Well,
I mean, that's a race.
Go ahead.
I think that's a race that we'd be willing to see, right? I think any of us will be willing to see a debate between between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. But this is where, the organization, like Ryan Grimm was saying, that it was a free for all after the first round. If people had really thought about, if these people really wanted to stop Bernie Sanders, they would have gone to Biden. And it seems like because of the free-for-all, they went everywhere else but to Joe Biden, which is great for Bernie Sanders, right? Amy Klobuchar is not a threat in the long run. I don't care how many jokes she tells. Pete Buttigieg is not a threat in the long run. The real threat in the long run, obviously, was Joe Biden. And because of the caucus structure, I would think that they would have been organized enough for the second round just out of quote-unquote strategery. But as Ryan Grimm said, it was a free-for-all. And in that case, some second and third tier candidates are rising to the top, and we can handle them past New Hampshire.
I think Klobuchar, the more she plays into the race, like we were talking earlier, are they going to coalesce around Warren? And I don't think that they're going to do that. I think they're going to desperately try and find somebody else. And so if some of that energy goes to Klobuchar, I think what Klobuchar does, when Klobuchar is not taking any votes away from Bernie Sanders. No. I don't think.
Exactly.
I don't think. I mean, maybe some, but not in any real big numbers.
No.
And so I think what you're going to see is Klobuchar is going to cut in to Buttigieg and to Warren. And
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just okay. So we have New Hampshire. Let's get to South Carolina. Okay, and then into Nevada. Biden's out. Warren's doing decently well. She's taking second in all three of the first states. I have no idea what's going to happen.
South Carolina?
Not knowing South Carolina. I don't know what. Well, maybe. I mean, if Biden...
Steyer.
Oh, right. Of course, Steyer. The other one.
But I don't think Steyer can actually compete with Bernie Sanders. See, Steyer can pull away from Biden in South Carolina, but I don't think Steyer can pull away from Bernie Sanders.
We're talking about in terms of Warren. Who's going to come in second in South Carolina? That could easily be Steyer.
Okay.
So say Warren does second New Hampshire, Iowa, not South Carolina, second in Nevada, and then you go into Super Tuesday and Warren does second in Texas. What else do we have? Second in California, maybe even first. You got a real issue here. I don't see Klobuchar going that far, even if she's picking up other support. Same thing with Pete. I don't know. I think Warren will take that light support. And who knows, what Biden might drop out. I don't know.
Well, we don't know. But
apparently Biden is speaking right
now.
Oh, he is?
Is he?
But he's not on screen.
Holy crap. Here's Biden.
47 people.
That's what we just said.
And after all the second alignments and all the math, it ended
Who's
up
that?
with Sanders with
Is that
2
you?
delegates, Warren with 2 delegates, and Buttigieg with 2 delegates.
Oh, yeah, somebody's calling into
Even
Biden's.
though
Okay.
Sanders had more than double the number of people after the first alignment than Pete Buttigieg.
Doing what we're
They
doing.
ended up with
Look at they're doing what we're doing. We were on top of this a long time ago.
We're going to go now to
That's what happens when you hire
Biden
hacks.
headquarters, where Joe Biden is starting his remarks.
I want to thank you all our supporters, and all those incredible people who hold public office in this state that endorsed us, and all the endorsers from all across the country, my colleagues in the Senate, in the House, and from the Vice Presidency, all of you, and all the people from Delaware, California, all the people came from all over to campaign here. I want to tell you. And most of all, I want to thank the Iowans that are here. Well, the Iowa Democratic Party is working to get this result, get them straight. And I want to make sure they're very careful
Get
in
them
the
straight.
deliberations. And indications are, from our indications, it's going to be close. We're going to walk out of here with our share of delegates. We don't know exactly what it is yet, but we feel good about where we are. And look, so it's on to New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and well beyond. We're in this for the long haul.
It doesn't. I don't buy it.
Not just tonight, but throughout this
not at all.
campaign. This isn't, thank you.
Why?
Oh my God.
This isn't just another election. This is well beyond our party. This is about ending an era of, ending an era, God willing, of a president who, look, this is bigger than any of us. It really is. We cannot, we cannot allow Donald Trump to be reelected to the United States presidency again.
Forget the script, Joe. Just.
I'm ready to give him a new nickname.
Oh,
the
here.
former President Trump, Chris. The former President
that was all
Trump.
right, actually.
And folks, as I said, it's bigger than any candidate, bigger than any party. And folks, you know, I said from the outset, Jill and I both said, we're in a battle for the soul of the nation. And that's not hyperbole. We really believe that, and I think it's been demonstrated every single hour he remains as President of the United States. Folks, each and every one of us knows that deep in our bones that everything this nation stands for is at stake. And I really mean it. 4 more years of Donald Trump will fundamentally alter the character of this nation. And character is on the ballot. That's what this is.
Right. So let's go with the guy who has a lot of questions surrounding him, whether legit or not, in terms of his integrity.
I say our view because you've been doing as hard as I have. Folks.
Man, this guy says folks more than I do.
I love her too, man. Well, I tell you what,
folks.
The other reason we're running and we're gonna make sure it happens is we've got to rebuild the backbone of this country. The working class, the middle class, they've been getting laid out badly by this administration.
Working class.
The middle class is being hurt very badly. But look,
He's
you know
fixed
what?
it now.
We have to unify this country as well. Everybody understands that CEOs and Wall Street bankers didn't build America. Ordinary, hardworking people led by unions.
Donors didn't build America.
Wow.
Unions.
This is the concession speech.
Huh?
And folks, we need a president who's not only ready to fight, but is also ready to heal this country. We can't hold grudges. We've got to be able to go out and unify the country.
Turn the page.
Because the president's supposed to heal as well as fight. And that's exactly what I plan on doing. We plan on doing. All of us in this hall plan on doing. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm going to go all over this country, every part of the Democratic Party, and reunite it. Men, women, gay, straight, everyone, black, brown, a whole universe of people out there. Because, folks,
all I hear is him saying folks.
Folks, there's nothing we've ever failed at when we've tried to do it together. Nothing America's ever failed at.
Well, I mean,
and so, ladies and gentlemen, all my friends, and by the way, I want to take a special thanks again to Alice
Stopping
Shaper
Donald
and the
Trump?
firefighters. You've
How's
been
that
incredible
feel?
to us. You've been incredible.
Apparently Bernie is on?
Is Bernie on?
I have his Periscope. It doesn't look like he's on yet.
Everybody knows who Donald Trump is.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's fortunate they do know now. They didn't know last time, I don't think. But they know now. And, folks, we got to let them know who we are. We choose hope over fear. We choose science over fiction. Unity over division. And compassion over cruelty. And maybe most importantly of all, truth over lies. Folks, we're going to do this, I promise you.
Who here likes oxygen? Anybody? Who likes to breathe air?
We'll do it together. May God bless you all.
Polls
May
well.
God protect our troops.
Anybody here from Iowa? Come on, folks.
He's endorsing Bernie. He's going to endorse Bernie.
You think he's going to endorse Bernie?
That's my money. I think he's going to endorse Bernie. He knows it's over. You can see it in his eyes. It's over for him. He knows it. But not immediately. Give him to South Carolina, but he's going to endorse Bernie.
You know, I got to say, I have not seen that many speeches from. Oh, look at this. So Warren is speaking right now.
Yep.
And who's
Pete's
and
somebody
Pete
for
Buttigieg.
Pete.
Why aren't they going to Warren?
Pete's one
On
black surrogate.
MSNBC. She's speaking. Why aren't they going to her?
We found
interesting.
inconsistencies in the reporting of 3 sets of results.
Oh,
Remember the 3 sets
You've
of
gotta
results
be
of the
effing
3
mother
different
effing
candidates
kidding.
planning
This is
on
what they're
reporting
saying.
tonight. The initial
Thanks, Robbie and Mook.
allocation, the reallocation after people moved around when some candidates weren't viable, and the delegate count. We found inconsistencies
I'll
in the
tell you
reporting
something.
of 3 sets of results. In addition to the tech systems being used to tabulate results,
I will tell you
we're
something.
also using photos of results and a paper
Never
trail to validate
have,
that all
has
results
anyone been
match
more
and ensure
validated
that we
than you have been
confidence and
validated
accuracy
tonight.
in the numbers we
When you
report.
talk about how
This is
corrupt
simply a
and
reporting
corrupt
issue.
maybe
The
gets
app did not go
incompetent
and this is
and
not
corrupt
a
in the
hack or
sense
an
that
intrusion.
like it's just
The underlying
there's
data
just
and paper trail is sound
it's self-dealing
simply
that's
take
going
down
on where
to
you're
further
hiring
report the
consultants and they're all in this sort of hermetically sealed bubble where they keep looking around and it's it's like it's basically a circle jerk where everybody's looking around going like, if you got me covered, I got you covered on this. I don't want to get too explicit, but I think everybody gets what I'm saying here. And that's how you get the guy who lost the election based upon their flawed digital
Data. Exactly.
modeling and data in charge of this this crap show.
And last time around, just in case people are curious, they phoned it in. They had people, real human beings, calling in the results, thousands and thousands. And yes, it's a structural nightmare, but at the end of the day, it's like paper ballots.
How much money did Robbie Mook make on this?
A lot.
Harvard's Belfer Center was involved as well. So
how much money? I want to know.
Well, also, I'm sorry, can we just go back to the original point of who decides who gets these contracts? At the end of the day, and I want to say this to the audience, because if there's now a time more than ever where we can voice frustration, Tom Perez is signing these checks and there's no oversight, there's no accountability, there's no vote on it. He has control of the budget. And the executive committee, I mean, I know I'm all process, but this is how stuff like that happens.
Yep.
That doesn't happen in most corporations. You have oversight.
All right. So now we have a little programmatic dilemma. Everybody here. We have 4 minutes on the YouTube thing. And I have 20 minutes before I'm supposed to get into a car.
Oh.
And go uptown. So 4 minutes on the YouTube. I think now would be a good moment to just, can we pause? Can we disconnect to the YouTube? Can we keep the stream going and then re-hook up? Or what has to happen?
Do a new stream.
Well, can't we do another stream on YouTube?
What we could do is just record a new recording and then just upload this for YouTube tomorrow. Or if you want to stream and
but if we go any further, we're going to lose the YouTube. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, what is that? Is that your phone?
It's the burning rally, I think. Sorry.
Well, at the very least, we got to cut the YouTube stream, which is a shame because we got about 16,000 people. 17,000. No, we will lose it if we. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just stop it and restart it. Can we just do that? Yeah. All right, folks. We're gonna stop, and we'll be back in. How long do you think it'll take? 3 minutes? 3 minutes. Bear with us, folks. We'll be right back. Appreciate it. Don't forget, subscribe to our channel. Subscribe to our channel and become a member. But we will be right back in a minute. I'm going to change it to some other quotes.